across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Okay, well, this is the Late Show with Andre Walker. Asher Gould is doing Passover at the moment, and I'd like to say, whatever you say, congratulations to anybody who's doing that at the moment. We're going to talk, obviously, about the BBC, but before I do, I just want to mention just very quickly about this situation that has arisen with the Independent Press Standards Organisation trying to get privacy for the family of David Paulsden, or as I prefer to call him, Zach Polanski. Actually, I don't prefer to call him David Paulsden because that's his actual name. But anyway, he is somebody who has done more than anybody else to make Islamism, to make jihadism a mainstream political view in the United Kingdom. That election campaign in Gorton and Denton, conducted in Urdu by the Green Party, was certainly a huge attempt to weaponise the unfortunate situation in Gaza in order to galvanise a Muslim vote for the Green Party. I personally do not believe there should be any right to privacy for politicians. But let me go even further than that. Let me say that if I was Jewish, and I say this to my Jewish friends at this time of Passover, if I was Jewish and it was my brother, my son, my father who was leading a political party, who were exciting those people who want the Jewish community to be destroyed in this country, then I would denounce him. And I think the Paulsden family should denounce Zach Polanski. I don't think they should cower in fear. I don't think they should bang their doors in the faces of the journalists that attempt to speak to them. I think it's absolutely time that they admitted that if there is going to be a pogrom in Britain, then it will be as a result of the actions of the Green Party and those on the political left who, just like they did in the case of Iran, believe passionately that socialism can only come about if there is also an alliance with the radical jihadis and the Islamists. By the way, in the case of the Ayatollah, what happened was when they took power in Iran, they simply killed all the leftists. I'm sure that's what would happen. I'm sure if the Green Party came to power in Britain, that Zach Polanski would be the first to die. But I do think, nonetheless, it would cause significant problems and hardship and hatred and division and fear for all of us who want to see a fair and democratic society. Anyway, you're welcome to phone me about that, 0344 499 1000. You're perfectly welcome, by the way, to say that the family of Zach Polanski have got no dog in this hunt and maybe they should be left alone. Maybe it is unfair to ask them, but I just look at the daughter of Ian Huntley, who publicly said that she hoped that her father's death would bring some closure to the family of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman, and that him being dead was the best place for him. Now, I wouldn't compare Ian Huntley to Zach Polanski, but I think you get my point, that the families of these famous people should be questioned, because, you know, if you're going to continue to hang around with somebody with heinous views, you know, you should justify doing that, or indeed say that you've distanced yourself from that person. We can't pick our family, but remember, in the case of Ian Huntley's daughter, nobody criticised her, nobody had a go at her, nobody said that the sins of the father should fall on the daughter. They just wanted to know what her opinion was, and her opinion was an evil man had been returned to hell. Anyway, talking of evil men, Hugh Edwards has made a statement following that unbelievable drama series where Martin Clunes played him, and it was all about him dating, having an online relationship with first a 17-year-old, then getting him to do pornographic videos for him, for which he paid him. And Hugh Edwards said, much has been written and reported in the past week following Channel 5's one-sided account. Other opportunities will arise later this year for me to state my case and to challenge the misleading or fabricated claims made in recent coverage. A number of serious claims still remain unanswered, and not just by me. It will now take some time for me to produce my own account, and until then, I do not intend to comment further. Listen, Hugh, you know how you got sent child pornography? The conviction makes you legally a paedophile. I think that your attempt to defend yourself is going to really fall on fallow land, I suppose, is the best way to say it. Now, I don't know about this Scott Mills situation, but let's go to somebody who does. Oh, okay. We can't go to someone who does. We are going to go to Alex Dyke, who's a former BBC presenter. Don't worry, he's not one of the dodgy ones. Let's read the Scott Mills statement. But I have to do this for legal reasons because we're completely confused by this whole situation. So Scott Mills has been sacked for the fact that there was a police investigation about 8 years ago into historic sexual offence. Now, apparently he was sacked because they discovered that the guy was under 18. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't know what historic sexual offence they thought was being investigated 8 years ago, but OK, fair enough. The BBC have now sacked him. I think there's some suggestion that he dated someone who was 16, but anyway, I don't know whether that's true or not. But anyway, here's Scott Mills' statement. An allegation was made against me in 2016 of a historic sexual offence, which was the subject of a police investigation in which I fully cooperated and responded in 2018. As the police have stated, a file of evidence was submitted to the Crown Prosecution Service, which determined that the evidential threshold had not been met to bring charges. Since the investigation related to an allegation that dates back nearly 30 years and the police investigation was closed 7 years ago, I hope that the public and the media will understand and respect my wish not to make any further public comment on the matter. I'm going to be flippant for a minute. You know, what with Jimmy Savile, what with Hugh Edwards, what with Scott Mills? Do you reckon at the BBC training, they sit there and they go, listen, one advice that we give to all of our presenters, don't have sex with a child. I mean, it always ended badly for us before. Trust me, it always ends badly. There's nothing but trouble if you do that. I mean, when I arrived, or when anyone arrives at talkTV, when anybody arrives at Talk Sport, when anybody arrives at Virgin, when anybody arrives at any of the brands in this building, Times Radio, whatever, there's no briefing to say, well, nobody says, oh, culturally we're trying to move away from the child sex culture. Nobody says that in this building because it's just fairly obvious that you're not going to date a child. I mean, it's just the whole thing is just completely mad. Similarly, I've said this before, and I know this sounds obvious, but downstairs, obviously, there are dressing rooms because some people turn up in their ordinary clothes. Also, if I'm being honest, if you leave your work clothes at work, they're tax deductible. But I don't do that, obviously. But obviously, you can get changed at work. You can have a shower here if you want. There's obviously makeup rooms and things like that. But if you said, after a show, oh, what I like to do after the show, the way I like to unwind is to invite a group of 14-year-old girls back into my dressing room and stay there till 1 a.m. You know, you'd just be thrown out of the building. I don't understand how the BBC don't understand that this is strange. Or what about Jimmy Savile? Jimmy Savile was not allowed to stay in hotels because of his behaviour. So instead, he bought a caravan and parked it in BBC Television Centre's car park with a sign on saying, if this caravan's rocking, don't come knocking. I mean, it's in the car park of a place of work. How could anybody think that this is sensible? Alex Dyke is now ready. Alex, well, first of all, just to be clear, you worked at the BBC and know a bit about the BBC, but you don't have any expertise in the specific field of historic child sex abuse.
No, of course I don't. But there were always rumours within the BBC, and not just the BBC, in the media as well. I mean, not all of these sex scandals come from the BBC. However, having said that, some of the people had a past at the BBC, like Philip Schofield, and then went to ITV. But there were always rumours. And when people say nobody knew about Jimmy Savile, they did. Because I heard the rumours when I was 17, even before I got into radio.
I've got to be honest with you with Jimmy Savile. The biggest, the worst one of them all is Louis Theroux. Right, and I'll tell you why. Because I watched the Louis Theroux documentary about Jimmy Savile, and I watched it and went, oh, Louis Theroux's calling him a paedophile, right? Now, years later, Louis Theroux said, I didn't know at the time when I was asking those questions. I, on my own, in my house, knowing nothing at all, watched that and said, he is sending a coded message saying, I believe Jimmy Savile's a paedophile.
Yeah. Yeah, he asked them in the back of a car in that documentary around about 1998, didn't he? Was it, I don't know if it was one of Louis Theroux's weird weekends. I mean, it must have been pretty weird hanging out with Jimmy Savile. But Louis Theroux admits that he befriended Savile after that and believed him. And the really confusing thing was the BBC ran 2 tributes to Jimmy Savile saying how wonderful he was, while the Newsnight team were gathering information to say he was probably one of Britain's worst paedophiles. I mean, that's 2 completely different sides of the BBC.
How does this work, Alex? Because I come into this job. I started by volunteering as a contributor on Julia Hartley-Brewer's mid-morning show, which is now back. But then I was a contributor on the breakfast show. Then they trained me up to be a presenter. Fantastic, and here I sit. I've never been under the impression that that the bosses here are going to kowtow to the presenters. I think if I if I attempted, as an example, to hold some sort of a party in a dressing room for young people, then security would just remove me. I mean, I don't like when you worked at the BBC. Did you get the impression that the management were just incompetent? How does it work?
Well, by the time I got to the BBC, it was 2010. So already they were different days. Right. But in the 1970s, I mean, life was different. We all know that.
Yes.
The life was different in the 1950s till it was in the 70s. And people like Jimmy Savile got away with murder. And there were people around who knew, who turned a blind eye. I know that because I've spoken to some of those people.
And when so the people that turned a blind eye, Alex, not all of them are evil people. What is their justification for turning a blind eye? Everybody else did, so it wasn't my problem.
Yeah, because there were rumours. I remember when I worked at Radio Luxembourg. I may have told you this story before.
Please do. Please tell me.
Right. So I worked at Radio Luxembourg in the 1980s, and our audience was dwindling. We weren't the great 208 anymore because commercial radio was stealing our audience. We were on a dodgy old AM transmitter, and the glory days were the 60s and 70s. So we brought back a show called Luxembourg Legends, where we would bring back the old Radio 1 DJs from yesteryear and give them a 2-hour slot on a Sunday night. Anyway, we did loads of them and it worked really well. So we talked about a series 2, and I went up to my boss and said, we've got to get Jimmy Savile. And he said to me, and he had worked at Radio 1 and had come across from Radio 1 to work at Radio Luxembourg, and he'd only been there 6 months. I said, we've got to get Savile. He said, over my dead body, the man is weird, the man is a pervert. And I asked him what the rumour was. Now, the rumour that my boss had heard was that it was necrophilia, and that's why he worked in the hospitals. Now, maybe some of that was going on as well.
Oh, they think it did. They think it did.
Yeah. But he didn't think, or he hadn't heard the rumour about the underage girls and a couple of boys. But there were rumours, and of course in those days people said we couldn't prove anything. But I think I may have mentioned to you this before. In the summer of 1979, Jimmy Savile's brother was accused of rape, and it was in all of the papers. Have I told you this story before?
No, go for it.
So me being a dyslexic DJ would only ever read stories about Radio 1 because I wanted to be on top of the pops, and that's where I was heading and all of that. So for me to read a story, it had to be an interesting picture, and I really had to want to read it. So I read about Jimmy Savile's brother because, of course, he was connected to Savile at Radio 1. And I was DJing that night in a club, and all the DJs every Thursday would come down. It'd be a different Radio 1 DJ every Thursday night in the summer in this big club on the Isle of Wight called the Carousel. And that Thursday, a Radio 1 DJ came in, and I said to him, what about Jimmy Savile's brother? And he said, let me tell you something. You will never hear anything bad about Jimmy Savile in his lifetime. And I said, why? And they said, he knows some heavy people. Now, that was July 1979. Yeah. So the rumours, I know the rumours were around then. And then I and then all those years later, 1985, 1986.
I heard a remarkable story. There was a relative of Jimmy Savile's who, I forget which one it was, who as a teenager went to London, got to King's Cross Station, having come from Yorkshire, and they were just wandering around, and somebody invited them to a party, and these kids were like 14, 15 or whatever. And when they arrived, they realised that it was just a mistake to have come to this place, right? And they'd been picked up by some pervert in King's Cross Station. In a way, I think that happened more in those days, perhaps, than now. I think people, particularly transport hubs, look out for stray kids. But anyhow, they said at the time they believed they were rescued because in walked Jimmy Savile. And Jimmy went to his cousin or whatever, "Oh, I've come to get you." And he went, "Oh, that's great. How did Jimmy know we were here?" And of course, it's only subsequently that Jimmy Savile must have just been one of the perverts attending the party and happened to spot a couple of kids that he knew and therefore rescued them on that basis.
There are so many of these people in this business which we love, and that is a great shame. There was a Radio 1 DJ back in the 60s who was collared for being a paedophile. And I remember being in commercial radio in the mid-80s, and he turned up at our radio station. And I said, I went to the production guy and said, "You know who that is, don't you? You know that he is a paedophile and he served time." And he said, "Yeah, but he's in to do a voiceover." Now, a lot of people watching this or listening to this will say, "Well, he's paid his crime."
Is he the one that kept going back to prison and kept working?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guy called Chris Denning.
I think I've heard of him.
Yeah. And I complained about it at the time, but they said, well, his crime is spent. But the trouble is, with these kind of people, they never stop.
No.
I mean, look at Gary Glitter. Gary Glitter got released from prison. He went to a halfway house.
Yep.
And when he was at the halfway house, he asked staff how he could get back on the dark web. So they took him back to prison, where he still is now.
I mean, I have to be honest with you. People in this building get upset at some of my more fruity views on crime and punishment. But what I always say is, if you do not like the judicial system in a particular country, don't go to that country. So as an example with Shamima Begum, they always say, "Oh, you can't talk about the death penalty for someone who's 16 at the time." Well, look, the death penalty exists in these countries for terrorism. Therefore, why should she be treated differently because she had a British passport? The punishment in Vietnam for child rape is public machine gunning. Now, I think that we as the British state should have supported Vietnamese prosecutors in machine gunning Gary Glitter. And the reason is because if you don't want to be machine gunned, don't rape a child in Vietnam, right? Now, you know, I think that's a pretty simple proposition, isn't it?
Gary Glitter faced the death penalty and had to pay off 2 families to have those charges dropped, so that he didn't force a firing squad. He didn't face a firing squad. I'll tell you what. Look,
I always get into trouble, as I say, for my views on crime and punishment. But we have called for Glitter to be machine gunned in Vietnam. Right, that is what I call expert level. But we're running over on the break. Alex is going to stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I thought I'd just read out a statement by the outgoing Director General of the BBC, Tim Davie. He was talking about the culture of the BBC. What is it? The culture of child sex at the BBC. He says, it'll never be fully fixed, but I think it's changing. I really do. I mean, can you imagine in a school if you go, well, we've got rid of most of the paedophiles, but we'll never completely eradicate the problem. I mean, it's just madness, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Davie said we are treating people kindly now. And I'm thinking, well, let's look at Scott Mills and compare him to Hugh Edwards. And as I've said before, the BBC are damned if they do, damned if they don't. They suspended Hugh Edwards on full pay. Then he got a BBC bonus at the end of it. They've just got rid of Scott Mills. And the one point I wanted to bring up tonight for your viewers and listeners just to think about, Andre, and you'll know this because you work inside. In the early 70s, Clint Eastwood made a film called Play Misty for Me, which is about a nighttime DJ who has a stalker. He has a crazed fan. Now, I would imagine just about every radio DJ in the country has had a crazed fan and had a stalker. And we don't know who this person is who's made this complaint against Scott Mills.
Right.
And it could, that, I've not heard that be mentioned, and I just wanted to put it out there. And as I said a couple of days ago on this channel, the BBC have got form for just cocking this up and turning it into a calamity in every way, either by not acting quick enough, or look what they did with Tony Blackburn. They fired Tony Blackburn from Radio 2, right? He's a national treasure. He's a lovely, lovely man. He was completely innocent. They put him and his family through months of hell.
Well,
Tony, being a decent guy, just went back to work completely innocent.
Can I ask you this question? Right, this is a difficult thing because there's been some suggestion. I don't know if it's true that what has been accepted is that Scott Mills dated a 16-year-old when he was 22. What would that be compatible or incompatible with public life? I don't know the answer actually.
No, I don't think. I mean, if that's true, I don't.
That would be entirely legal, by the way.
But whether it's, you see, the BBC, any company can fire you. You don't have to break the law to be fired. So if that brings the BBC's name into disrepute, then they can fire him. And I personally, as a dad, don't find that acceptable. 22-year-old guy with a 16-year-old boy, I wouldn't find that acceptable. 22-year-old man with a 16-year-old girl. But that's just me.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I think that one of the big problems in this country is do not misquote this. Please listen to the whole thing. It is legal to have sex with a child. The reason is because you are a child up until the age of 18 and the age of consent is 16. So in theory, you or I tomorrow could go and find a 16 or 17-year-old who is legally a child and sleep with them. I mean, I just don't see how that makes a great deal of sense.
Well, the laws are draconian, to say the very, very least. But I remember what it was like, and I'm sure you do too, to be a 16-year-old. You know, that's one of the things you wanted to do. It'll be very, you can't stop 16-year-olds having sex. Maybe you can stop them having sex with people of a certain age. So maybe, I don't know how on earth you'd ever police it, but, you know, 16-year-old girls can have a physical relationship with a boy of 17 or 18. Maybe
well, there is something, remember, with the Crown Prosecution Service, where in order for them to prosecute somebody, there has to be both a realistic chance of conviction and there has to be a public interest in doing it. Now, the Crown Prosecution Service often ignore the second element of this, but in theory, what that means is, if you are 16 and you slept with a 15-year-old, then there may be all the evidence in the world, and you would legally have broken the law, but also the public interest would just not exist. They just go, look, the reality is nobody cares that you broke the law in this particular case.
No, and I think if you are the father of, and I'm not speaking for every father, but if you're the father of a 15-year-old girl and she's had the same lovely boyfriend who's part of the family and he's 16 and they've been dating for 18 months and that boy got that 15-year-old girl pregnant, I think even the father of that girl would understand that that is not a sex crime. And that's common sense, right?
That's right. It's something that you would be unhappy about, but not because you believe that your child was a victim of abuse, I think is the key point.
You might be furious with both of them, but I think we would all understand that. I think the BBC's problem is that, and to a certain extent other channels, because I'm just thinking now of Philip Schofield and cases like that these people have abused their position, they've abused their fame, and that just isn't on.
I mean, the other thing, when you look at Philip Schofield, when he goes, I was, the chairman of a drama school in Manchester. I met a 12-year-old, but we only started dating when he was 16. I think, you think, sorry, okay, unwise but not illegal is correct. But I mean, it is very unwise, isn't it? I mean, if your defence is, I waited, I met a 12-year-old, we got on really well, but it was only when they were 16 I had sex with them. I'm 50. I mean, nobody on this planet is going to think that that is an appropriate situation.
No, that is not a good look.
And by the way, you always remember, so he was the chairman of a board of governors. Had he been a teacher, he'd have gone to prison for that.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that he wasn't made more of an example of. And I like Philip Schofield. I think the great shame in all of this, obviously, the most important people are the victims. But if you're my age and you enjoyed Stuart Hall and It's a Knockout and Gary Glitter, singing I Love You, Love Me, Love, and Jimmy Savile on Top of the Pops, I've had to airbrush my childhood. Rolf Harris on TV. We all loved Rolf Harris.
The one that's most amazing is, and I've said this to his face, the only one who wasn't a pervert was Cranky. The one who got his wife to dress up as a schoolboy. He was the only one that wasn't dodgy. How could it be? And when they said, how did you first discover your wife was very good at impersonating a little boy? We went to a fancy dress do. Did you really? Because I don't think there's anybody who believes that. But he turned out to be the only one who wasn't dodgy.
I know. Well, times have changed, and thank goodness they have. But there's just part of me that thinks, let's just wait and see what happens. Because if the BBC have reacted with a knee-jerk reaction because of the Hugh Edwards docudrama that went out on Channel 5.
Let's just be clear what you're saying here, because there is another side to this. This man has been exonerated by a police investigation.
Yes.
I mean, let's just be clear. Scott Mills is not being prosecuted. The case has gone to the Crown Prosecution Service, and it's not going to trial now or ever. No new information from a policing point of view has come to light. And this is a slightly bizarre thing about the BBC's position, because they're saying they now know more about the allegation. Yeah, but if the allegation wasn't proven, that doesn't really matter, does it?
No, and that's why I wonder whether something happened when that docudrama about Hugh Edwards went out on Channel 5 last week, and maybe that. And I'm just trying to put two and two together and kind of come up with four, like most of Britain is over this at the moment, because it was a great shock. Maybe that original victim has come back for another go. I mean, I don't know that, but Scott Mills was cleared. This is You know, he is innocent, and there's a big argument to say that you should remain innocent until proven guilty. In fact,
that's absolutely right.
I thought that's what happened in Britain, but
and innocent until proven guilty is an incredibly important point, because always remember, the courts do not decide between innocent and guilty. They decide between guilty and not proven to be guilty, right? Therefore, it's important that we remember that you have to assume that those people not proven to be guilty are innocent, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, but I tell you what the great shame in these cases are for those who are innocent. Imagine you're a celebrity, you get suspended.
I couldn't imagine that.
or you're fired, you go to court, all the charges are dropped, and it's obvious that you're innocent. And you come out and you face the TV cameras for the 6 o'clock news, and they say, Mr. Smith, congratulations, you've been proved innocent. What Mr. Smith should say at that point is, no, because there's 3 million people watching this broadcast.
Yeah.
And if one of them believes, oh, I'm now a bit dodgy, in that person's eyes, I am not innocent. My name has been ruined. So if Scott Mills does get reinstated at the BBC because he's perfectly innocent, there will still be people for the rest of his life saying, oh, he's a bit dodgy. And that is the real crime if he's innocent.
But listen, I remember saying to my boss, I mean, as you know, I live quite a long way away, and there's some producers that live quite near me, and I said I'm happy for the producers to come in the car that News UK supply me, as long as it's very clearly recorded that they went back to their own house. Not because it particularly bothers me, but because after all this stuff, people think we're all dodgy.
I know, and it was a real privilege to work at the BBC when I worked at the BBC. But the name has been dragged through the mud. And it's not the first thing I say now when people talk to me about my career, because it's such a shame what has happened.
I was a BBC DJ in the 80s, what?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, that is such a shame. And I've got friends who were at Radio 1 in the 1970s who were DJs, who were lovely, lovely, lovely guys. And they don't want to talk about those days now because they fear they're going to be tarred with that brush.
Honestly, I remember I went to a friend of mine's funeral, and I was talking to the priest who administered it, and I mentioned that I went to a Christian Brothers school, Catholic Christian Brothers school. And I went, I'll tell you what the problem is with Catholic Christian Brothers schools. And the guy looked and his face dropped, and I went, there's not enough of them. And he went, oh, and I thought, you poor sod, you've spent your entire career in public service. You've given up, you know, the normal things that normal people get, you know, all the parties and holidays and all that sort of thing. And now you think everyone just thinks you're a sex offender, right? It's just, it's grossly unfair.
I know, and I think that for people in the church of not just the Catholic faith, other faiths, and you know, if someone says I was a scout leader,
yeah, exactly,
there's a little part of you that thinks, oh yeah, which is dreadful. That
it's absolutely terrible, absolutely terrible. You know, I mean, I find myself, my dad was really into youth football, and you do find yourself saying he started because my brother founded the team, right? You know, not he volunteered, which is an awful thing, really.
I know, so many decent people out there doing so many.
Well, people don't do it anymore. The Scouts can't get enough Scout leaders anymore.
Well, because and maybe that is the reason that people don't want to have the, you know, be scrutinised like that when all they want to do is help the community. But once again, I'm going to get back, Andre, to that. We're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. If we don't bother and we turn a blind eye, children are harmed. It's an impossible situation.
But I think that's. I don't think it's got anything to do with paedophiles. I think it's got something to do with the BBC having no real oversight. Not you know, the fact that it's got no shareholders. It's not subject to market forces. I think just creates a culture where it's untouchable, like the Politburo or the KGB. All right, Alex, I'm really sorry. We're well over the break. We're going to have to go. But when we come back, we're going to be talking about the latest developments in Donald Trump land.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Okay, look, there's loads of stuff to talk about with Donald Trump. We could talk about the fact that he's appointed an acting US Attorney General, but there's all sorts of things about Iran, about NATO, about the fact that he says that Britain hasn't got a navy. Shh, he's telling the truth. And let's go now to Adam Coleman, who's a columnist at the New York Post. Adam, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm really good, actually. We've never met before, have we?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. Well, look, you know what? It's Thursday night. Donald Trump's been ranting all week. There's all sorts going on. Tell me anything, because there's so much to talk about. Yeah, what's the most important thing Trump's done? I know that sounds like a stupid question, but there's been that much. That go for it. Say anything you want.
Well, I think the most significant is Pam Bondi leaving her position as the Attorney General. Yeah. There's many different ways that you can look into this. Some have put this as a firing on Donald Trump's part, but in another way, they're framing this as her preparing to go into a private sector job. So it really just depends on which narrative you want to believe. It could be both. It could be that, yes, Trump is a little bit upset with her performance. There have been a lot of criticisms coming from Republicans, even about Pam Bondi's handling when it comes to Epstein files, trying to do that whole big reveal to the influencers, and it was nothing but redacted information. So there's a lot of criticisms about her position.
Just to be clear, the Attorney General in the United States of America is similar to the Attorney General in Britain. It's your top lawyer, effectively, even though it's a cabinet position.
Exactly.
So look, I mean, the Epstein files, I worry about them very greatly, because I think there's balance to be had here, because this is somebody who, look, I personally believe he's a former CIA agent. I think the behaviour of Jeffrey Epstein is kind of commensurate with somebody who has some sort of training in the intelligence services, and because he's American, one would assume that's the CIA. I don't want to besmirch the CIA in any way, but this is somebody who works with information arbitrage. This is somebody who understands how to weaponize the rumor mill and blackmail people and exploit people. Therefore, his files actually would be full of things that potentially are just not true, and just a big pile of mudslinging.
Actually, I wasn't expecting you to say that last part, because a lot of people have taken his emails to mean everything, and that everything that he is saying must be true. So on one hand, he's this heinous character, but on the other hand, everything that he has ever written must be 100% true. So I actually like that angle that you just gave, that he may be a human being, he may be an asset, he may be someone who's occasionally lying, who is, for example, there's discussion as far as, did Donald Trump get him banned from Mar-a-Lago, which he disputes. He was never banned from Mar-a-Lago. But then other people verify that actually he was banned from Mar-a-Lago. So is he a liar? Does he lie sometimes? Does he lie all the time? So what information can you trust coming from his particular emails?
Yeah, well, the reality is he's somebody who, funnily enough, I've got a friend of mine in hedge funds, and they said it's quite interesting. It's not unusual to go from very little to being a billionaire if you're in a hedge fund. But what you have to do is place yourself close to an enormous level of wealth, and that's something he did. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that he didn't have an enormous level of knowledge of financial markets, because fundamentally this is just somebody whose job it is to get close to people, to exploit his relationship with people, and then as a friend of mine says, who's a lawyer, there's always people who can do the donkey work. It's all about the overall strategy.
Yeah, exactly, and that makes sense to me. The head of General Motors, I don't think, can take apart a car. Yes. So obviously you have someone who's at the very top, and he's a schmoozer. I think to some extent he was a schmoozer, or at least he was doing schmoozing type of activities, which is why everyone has photos with him at a particular event. Some people argue, was he that outgoing? Yes, he was there, but was he the life of the party? Maybe he wasn't, who knows? I just think that Jeffrey Epstein at some point becomes kind of like this Paul Bunyan figure, where everyone has these tales that they're telling, and it's hard to decipher what is reality and what isn't.
I've always imagined him being. Have you ever seen the film Schindler's List? I've always imagined at the beginning of the film Schindler's List, where Oscar Schindler, fundamentally knowing nothing about pot making, knowing nothing really about business, and really not having a great deal of money, just shows up to a nightclub and just starts flashing his money around and getting photos with everybody and whatever. And look, I don't know how accurate the opening scene of Schindler's List is, but the general idea is that a broke guy comes along and then just positions himself as a friend with all of these people, and then suddenly an enormous amount of wealth flows from that, which he's done really very little to achieve.
Yeah, and never underestimate someone. You know, just because you might start off with not that much money doesn't mean that you don't have the intelligence to earn it. Especially if you're around people with money. I've been around some notable people and some wealthy people, and they will tell you how they got their money. Like, they're not secretive. I think that's one thing normal people who don't necessarily have access to wealthy people think, is that they hoard information. I found the opposite, at least in the States. I found the opposite. When you're around them, they'll sit down with you for an hour and tell you level by level how they made it to the point of becoming a millionaire, multimillionaire, or even a billionaire.
Yeah, because they're geeks, aren't they? I mean, quite often, the reason that, I remember, I've got a friend of mine who's a billionaire, right? And I honestly think that the reason he became a billionaire was because nobody told him not to. And it was kind of, he just did his own thing, and nobody said, chill out, have a life, get a bird. You know what I mean? He just kind of got on with it. And it sounds like an utterly ludicrous thing, because at the end of it, I mean, he's literally, I mean, this guy's funny. He's got a house where it's a semi-detached house in Golders Green, where he's dug out the basement, so you don't know it's as enormous as it is. But I think that these people are very geeky. I'll tell you what, look, we've only got a very limited amount of time with you, Adam. Why don't we go to a break now, and then we can talk all about Iran, because Britain, I think, has really disgraced itself in the past couple of weeks, but you may take a different view. More next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Talk, and the United Kingdom, which used to be the world's most powerful country, richest and most powerful country, was unable to send one frigate to defend the sovereign base in Cyprus. And as you know, I'm part Greek, part British, got no teeth either, and I genuinely think that the Cypriots have every right now to say that the British sovereign bases should disappear, because how can you have part of your country occupied by another country's military bases when they can't even defend those military bases. The Straits of Hormuz need to be reopened. And I have to say this, and I've said it before, the United States of America is 4 miles from Russia. Right, people forget there's the other way around. The only reason why the United States of America was involved in NATO and kept boots on the ground in Europe is because the majority of the Soviet population lived in Europe. The Soviet Union has now gone. There is no reason for the United States of America to support NATO unless it's a global alliance that supports America. Adam Coleman from the New York Post. I mean, why would somebody from Alabama defend Ramstein in Germany when nobody's going to support the United States of America in the Middle East?
I mean, that's a good question. And it actually, it's a very good point that you bring up, and people forget how close Alaska is to when it comes to Russia. Much of this, the way I kind of see it from an American perspective is that the United States military is basically the guard of the world. Yeah. Essentially, we're the police of the world, right? The world's police. And so it seems like everyone is fine with that position. And that's one of Donald Trump's complaints, is that we are set up as the world's police, yet we're part of this organization that we're also chipping equally, yet we're paying the most for the world's security. And here we are trying to get involved in when it comes to taking out Iran, because they are a threat to the global order. So where's the support? I thought we were some sort of ally.
But one of the big problems, Adam, is very simply this. Yeah. The Japanese attack Pearl Harbor, right? And the United States of America sends the majority of its troops to free Europe, right? Not to fight Japan. The reality is there is a huge arrogance here, which is, let's be honest, Europeans own America as well, therefore we have a special place in Americans' hearts. And I honestly think that when Barack Obama came along, rightly or wrongly, suddenly there was a wake-up call, which was, hey, you know what? The leadership of the United States of America might not always be a bunch of Irish, German, British people. And ultimately, if there was now a similar war, I think the American public would demand the majority of people fought Japan, not Hitler, because bluntly, it's not all about white Europeans anymore.
Maybe that's the case. This is all hypothetical.
Yeah, sure.
But if we speak as far as this particular conflict and what I see coming from, let's just say Western Europe,
yes.
The Western powers, what I see is general weakness. What I see is them understanding that no one's disagreeing that Iran wasn't a threat. That's one thing I haven't heard someone saying, no, actually, Iran was not a threat. No, there was definitely nothing to worry about there when it comes to nuclear weapons. So no one disagrees on the point. But what they don't want to do is actually get involved in, quote unquote, someone else's mess. Well, we're supposed to be allies here. And this is affecting the world economy when it comes to the oils. So you want the United States, which already pays the most in world security, even though we're supposed to all chip in, but okay, fine. You want the United States to be the only one trying to ensure that a power like Iran doesn't get nuclear weapons, it becomes a threat to everybody, and you want us to shore up the strait. So you want us to do everything once again. And so I think the reason why they want us to do everything is because we've been doing everything, and there is a general weakness in getting involved in any sort of conflict whatsoever coming from Western Europe.
But if you look at the, I always forget which leak of diplomatic papers was who in terms of the stuff that was put on WikiLeaks. But ignoring the fact I can't remember particularly which incident, it was remarkable when you read a lot of these diplomatic cables where every country in the Middle East was encouraging the Americans to attack countries like Iraq, get rid of Saddam Hussein, deal with the Iranians. And then but in all of these diplomatic cables, it'd go, however, they won't publicly support us. What they've done is, the embassy in Kuwait has been visited to tell the American ambassador, hey, do us a favour, get rid of Saddam, and then but we're going to slag you off when we do it, when you do it. And I think similarly, when you're not contributing anything financially to any of this, I mean, I repeat the comment. You know, if I was from Minnesota and my 18-year-old son was at risk of dying to protect Europe, I would ask myself why somebody from Sunderland does not have the back of American Marines in the Strait of Hormuz. I would ask that very simple question.
Yeah, and I can definitely understand that point. And listen, this is not to say that Americans in general agree with everything that is going on in our approach when it comes to Iran.
No.
There are a lot of questions, even amongst myself, as far as, is this a good idea? Was this a good idea in the first place? And so there's different times I wrestle with that. But there's a lot of gun-shy play when it comes to this type of stuff, because we saw Iraq, we saw Afghanistan, we saw them. I remember, I'm at least old enough to remember, mission accomplished, and George W. Bush is coming off the plane. We did it, guys. And then 20 years later, Joe Biden messes it all up coming out of Afghanistan. So it becomes like these seemingly forever wars. And American soldiers lost their lives over what exactly? And that is the ultimate thing. It's one thing for us to get into a conflict where there's a clear way that we can win this. And it's a threat to American society, and we must do it, and we're compelled to do it.
But don't more Americans die because of an inability of countries to just do the basics and say, we agree with them, right? And say, you know what? The reason America went into Afghanistan was not because they're bloodthirsty neocons who want to wipe out every Muslim. It's because three of their major buildings were hit by planes being used as missiles, right? That's, that basic. If you read, I would imagine most young people now think that the World Trade Center attack was a response to the attack in Iraq and Afghanistan, because the way it's presented is America hates all Muslims and Muslims are very upset about it, right? That's not the way round it out. But that's because of the general moral cowardice of countries like Britain.
Yes, I don't disagree with you there. And I really hope our young people don't actually believe that. But it wouldn't surprise me because of the particular narrative that we have going on here in the States. But you're exactly right. It was a response. Most Americans were fine with the response. The problem is the plan. And that's what, I don't know if Donald Trump has actually communicated properly what his plan is. If the plan is that we're not having boots on the ground, we're just going to bomb them to the oblivion, then that's the plan. But if that plan doesn't work, and then you're now saying, well, actually, we're just going to put 1,000 troops on the ground, that starts to sound sort of familiar. And then it becomes 10,000 troops. Then it's 2 years later. You understand what I'm saying? Absolutely. That is the fear coming from America.
But if you look at what happened in the invasion of Iraq, with the little bit that Britain did in Basra, it was remarkable. And I think sometimes the Americans have not learnt from the British, because the British, look, ruled India with 10,000 people. Your average Indian never met a British person. When we went to Basra, first thing we did was told all local government workers to come in the following day, all police to come in the following day. They had a new British leader, but all the police stayed, and they challenged local kids to a football match. British soldiers were issued with sweets to give to local kids and all this sort of thing, which was basically the standard British plan. Take control of the levers of government quickly, get everybody back to work, get all the public sector people paid, make sure the local kids are not angry, do something to humanise the British soldiers. Well, of course, the Americans have created the greatest invasion force in human history, but it's not a colonial army, and they've not learnt the lessons of colonialism in the way perhaps the British have.
You could be right there.
That, by the way, was the basis for why Bill O'Reilly called for Donald Rumsfeld to be sacked, because he said you had a group of people in the British who actually knew how to do this, but you never listened to it. I mean, I'm perfectly happy, it has to be said, with just bombing the hell out of the Iranian nuclear weapons program and just saying, well, okay, regime change is for the Iranians to deal with. I don't think the invasion by America, and I hope it doesn't come, but I don't think it's a good idea either way.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't want it to come to that point. But I think with everything that we do, especially the Trump administration, there has to be good PR alongside it. You can't just say, we're just going to bomb them, they're a threat, without telling the American public with confidence as to what the plan is, or obviously not every single detail, but here's the general strategy that we're attempting to do, and we're going to execute it flawlessly. So if they have a particular plan, they need to make sure they communicate it. But if they have a plan and they say something, and then a week later it becomes something else,
yes,
you lose the confidence of the public.
Final comment. That is why America lost in Afghanistan. The reality is, 8 weeks into that, well, probably 6 weeks into that campaign, America had won, and every time they won, they came up with a new, higher standard of what it constituted to win, until in the end they needed liberal democracy, they needed proper economics, they needed a democratic government, elected president, and you thought my God, I mean, and America was defeated in Afghanistan only because they kept raising the standard of what constituted a win until it couldn't be done. Anyway, Adam Coleman, thank you so much for coming in. Adam's a columnist at the New York Post. What a great guest. So pleased that he's joined us. We're going to have the paper review in a couple of moments with Pete Barnes. Asher Gould, by the way, is doing Passover. It is the second day of Passover. I'm told that Jews celebrate it for 2 days unless they live in Israel, and it's all got something to do with how long it took to get the message from Jerusalem to Britain. I'll be back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is the paper review with Andre Walker and Pete Barnes. I've just got to say, that story of the oldest tortoise reminds me of that brilliant but cruel Facebook post where there's a young girl who's got this thing, and she's throwing it back into the river, and she goes, I found this guy wandering around, so I've taken him back to my local river. And the post underneath goes, that's a tortoise, not a turtle.
Yeah.
It can't swim.
It can't swim, yeah. I know.
She's picked up, drowned it. That's so awful.
It's like the, it's you know, PETA, the PETA people, the mental ones, where they let all the birds go. They can't fly.
No.
You know, all these kind of stories, you're just like, you people are so dumb.
Oh.
Honestly, but that story about this 192-year-old, it's very Alfred Nobel, isn't it?
Yeah,
like, he read his own obituary.
Yeah,
kind of
absolutely.
I think it's so funny. But,
Okay.
yeah.
Let me just talk to you about, because he's somebody that I know. I want to talk about Simon Dudley,
Yes.
Mr. Grenfell.
Yes.
If you like, he was the reform. Housing spokesman. But I want to talk to it in the context of what we've just heard in the news. This awful situation about the funeral director who wasn't cremating the bodies. We've just heard a very well-meaning, but I think ill-informed person who's turned around and said, we need more legislation to deal with this. What this funeral director has done is not legal.
Yeah.
We don't need more legislation to deal with it. Dudley was trying to make the point that after Grenfell, we brought in a series of draconian rules, which actually has made it much, much harder to build in this country and may not have made us safer. Now, when somebody says we've all got to die sometime, you think, well, I don't know what relevance that's got to the point, and it's also it is a bad thing to say. But I do think there is a great tendency to want to constantly legislate on everything. I mean, I would say about Grenfell Tower, a building that was that flammable should not have been legal anyway, was not legal anyway.
Yeah.
And actually, when they go, we need more inspectors, I'd say sack the ones that inspected the building.
Definitely. I'm actually going to say that Simon Dudley was actually correct on the property stuff. He was 100% correct, and it was really irritating, actually, that other little bit of what he said has now dominated the story, because we have actually, we've obliterated the property market in this country, but also on the commercial side of things as well. We've put taxes, regulations, bureaucracy above everything else, and this is one of the reasons our economy is in the drain, because our economy and the housing market are basically the same thing. So yeah, it's nonsense. What I think this story really is about is actually, it's about the kind of experience to being in front of a camera and being media aware. And I think this is where reform might fall down, and they need to kind of get some people in to kind of shore this up, because there have got to be teams of people from like the Greens or the Lib Dems or Labour watching every single candidate, every single tweet, every single interview, and they'll wait for that one slip up, and this is what it's going to, and they're going to lose really good people. But
I've had good times and bad times with Dudley, but I've known him for 15 years or whatever it is. This man fundamentally, I don't think he's a brilliant politician by any stretch of imagination, and I think I think we've learnt that once again. But he is somebody who was a major player in the City of London. He's somebody who financed the Channel Tunnel, as far as I understand. He's somebody who had a significant experience with Citigroup, and somebody who really was quite a well celebrated the chairman of Homes England. And you say to yourself, well, okay, you know what? If what we want to do is bring good people in, some of them are going to be crap as politicians. But actually, do we care?
Yeah, but you shouldn't make them the spokesperson. I think that's the key bit. But then, again, this is the.
So you'd have got him to write the policy.
Yes, he should have written the policy, and somebody else should have read it out in front of the class. I think that's probably what they should have to do. But again, this just comes from being a new party. They're going to make these mistakes, but it's going to cost them.
But it's the Simon Dudley. It's the Simon Dudley outcome. To remove somebody that people think is going to be bad at the job, or is it to just trip him up and trip up reform? Just, you get the impression he's done this whole big interview about how we can get Britain building again. He's very worried about the lack of properties for young people. He's bothered that regulation isn't working.
Everything we want to hear.
Yeah.
That's the annoying thing.
Absolutely. And he makes a crass and insensitive comment, which really has very little impact on anybody, and that's the end.
Oh yeah, I think there's two sides on this. Yes, they were definitely looking to trip him up. I think they pounced on this comment. We do have a tendency to kind of, you can't say this about this particular incident. Yes. We do tend to do that because there are significant problems with Grenfell. There was a problem with the investigations. It's not a perfect thing. And also,
well, you remember David Starkey? Remember with David Starkey, he said, if slavery was a genocide, why are there so many black people? He didn't quite say it like that.
Yeah.
But Now, look, ultimately, he didn't say that slavery was good.
Yes.
He didn't say he liked it.
Yeah.
He didn't say he was keen to see it.
He didn't say the lines. He didn't say what you're supposed to say.
Exactly
and
that.
therefore, the kind of the blob, the civil society, whatever you want to call it, turned on them.
He's saying slavery's not genocide, but it wasn't.
Yes, he was like, oh my God, he said the thing you're not supposed to say, but we all know is true. And but then I will say that it is interesting where reform draw the line. Because they have had certain instances where people have said things and they've been shown the door.
No, reform.
But I'm just saying, this is not actually having a go at reform. I'm genuinely not having a go.
Reform draw the line, as you full well know. If it's one of Tice's people,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And it's
hey,
not,
you said that. Twitter, he said that, not me.
It's not that Farage and Tice don't get on well.
Yeah.
It's just. Look, if it was one of my mates, I'd probably save it.
Yeah, I know. I think that's true, but it is interesting because there's been lots of councillors that have been dropped. There's candidates not gone in, and all this kind of stuff. There's no consistent policy on it, and I think that is a big problem. And obviously, each incident is one. They're all unique and all the rest of it. But you've got to have some kind of guiding.
I think the problem. I'll tell you one thing that I think. I don't know, right? But my instinct is that Farage is just going to have to start telling the media to F off. And I'll tell you why. He has been burnt. And if you remember on Piers Morgan Life Stories, where he was going, where Piers Morgan did what the media often do. What about Bob Jones? And he goes, I'm sick of just defending these people I've never heard of. Now, Dudley and Farage apparently met once. But fundamentally, he's just like, I'm not coming out batting for someone I don't know.
Yeah, but the thing is, when you're party leader, you kind of take that on. You are the party. That's the problem, isn't it? Is that you always have to, and every cabinet secretary or every leader, senior party figure, always has to defend their own party in front of the scandal or whatever. That's just kind of, it's your turn in front of the, to take the cane kind of thing. But again, I do think it's because there is no central messaging. It all seems a little bit chaotic. There's no matron, as I always say. Like, you go here and say that, you go here and say that. They've not got that person. They don't have the Campbell. They don't have the messenger, kind of, the director.
Although my dad is a member of Lee. Isn't it amazing? Reforming Lee and Wigan get a significant amount of discussion, don't they?
We have done more for those two groups than anybody else, and Lee Miners as well.
Lee Miners welfare. Yeah. But so my dad went to a Lee reform meeting, which he felt was a bit of a shambles, and there was there were no candidates in place. Now, if you remember, for those of you that are interested, the reason that Pete and I talk about Wigan and Leeds because that's where we're from, but actually it is symptomatic of a lot of the stuff that's going on.
Yes.
James Grundy, Conservative MP, wasn't viable to win. The Conservatives were never going to hold the seat in 2024 because Labour had retained the councillor base. So my dad was worried. This week, my dad went to a reform meeting for the Wigan council elections. And he says they've got a full team in place, the team is excellent, and whatever.
Because they want Nandy's seat.
Well, of course they do.
Yeah, but this is the thing.
But stuff is being built.
Yes, it is.
They are.
The thing is, though, they're going to have to need so many seats and so much of a majority that can they build enough in time? If they were just a smaller party wanting to kind of come third, what they're doing now, perfectly fine. You're going to have a lot of power, a lot of MPs in the next general election. If you want to take power, the institution you've got to build is significant. And if you've got sloppy little groups, which will happen, of course they will, but you're not going to take on like a red wall seat very well. So yes, in Wigan they're going to be very well organised because Nandy is she's very vulnerable. So therefore that's where the money and the resources go. Correct. But because they've got to do that over 650, it's just a mountain. But then again,
I just wonder whether Wigan Borough, comprising Wigan, Makerfield, and Lee. Parliamentary constituencies. I just wonder if it's now going to become a bad example. Because I think that reform will massacre the Labour Party in Lee.
Oh, I think
they'll win Makerfield, and I think they may well win Wigan. I personally, if I was David Bull and I didn't have Lee and Makerfield from Labour at the next election, I'd be bitterly disappointed. And I think the high watermark is all three of them.
I think it is. But also, I would be. Is this going to be like a Starmer kind of majority where it's 200 or 300? At each seat. If it's a whopping majority, then they've got force, then they've got the mandate. If they've got the Starmer kind of thing, which I actually think Nigel's going to get, I don't see him having the kind of force to push anything through because he doesn't really have the country behind him, which is Starmer's main problem. He's no authority because nobody really voted for him.
What would make these red wall seats safe? I mean, I'll tell you what I think would make them safe. And I've thought for a long time about why Benjamin Disraeli and Boris Johnson were so popular in the north of England. And I think it is very much the kind of, in order to keep taxes down for the whole country, you've got to assist the north in the infrastructure required for the economics to build it. So as you know, in places like Wigan, people have just been stuck on welfare, right? And for 50 years, people have just drank and pizzaed themselves to death, and it's been, if you want to call it a genocide, it isn't, but you could call it a genocide. I mean, but it's been horrendous. And I think you do need things like, you know, the hybrid bill for the Manchester Ship Canal and stuff like that in order to lead the way. And I just feel like that's what Boris Johnson promised them, and that's what didn't happen. And if Nigel Farage can say, look, fundamentally we are a low tax regulation country, but when it comes to, I don't know, expanding an airport or doing things like, I don't know, a fast rail link between Manchester Airport and Liverpool Airport, you know, Northern Powerhouse Rail, you know, shit like
stuff
that.
like that, of course. But the thing is, though, we have this thing where we keep fetishizing the red wall, and we keep thinking that the working class we start to treat them like the left treats minority communities and things like that. We elevate above. We don't actually listen to what these communities want. I think that is a big problem. The Conservatives, it's one of the reasons they lost the red wall so badly. They didn't bother to listen. They told them what they wanted. And I do think that Reform is tending into that now, because it's always, you know, alarm clock Britain, it's getting up doing this. It's not always that, because what people actually want is a fair shake at the tail. They don't want a handout. And my big fear is when you look at what Robert Jenrick's doing economics-wise, it's a lot of handouts. Well, particularly when we look at the triple lock pensions. That was a moment where they could have changed politics forever.
Correct.
And had an education moment and said, well, there's no such thing as a pot that you paid into.
But what I would do if I was Nigel Farage, I would simply just read up on the DUP.
Yes.
Because I would turn
or the SDP, really.
I would turn around to myself and just say, what is it that the DUP did in Northern Ireland? Basically, they turned around and they said that, you know, there are a group of, if you like, constitutional conservatives, or unionists, as they call them, in Northern Ireland. But there are a group of these people. Some of them are middle class, some of them are working class. What we have to do is attempt to appeal to both. And what the UUP has done, the Ulster Unionist Party is a fundamentally conservative party, has actually not really appealed to the working class unionist community. And so, or rather, not really given them an offering that they're interested in. So, of course, the DUP comes along and they're vehemently strong on things like defence of the realm, vehemently strong on the, you know, military, the police, you know, criminal justice, all this sort of thing. But actually, are kind of quite lefty on economics.
Yes, this is very, very clear, particularly with the kind of reform base. That is a huge split between this kind of reheated Thatcherism, and also this kind of more kind of populist, left-wingy kind of economics, which is a very difficult tightrope to walk. But this is the problem of a populist party: is it's lots of different groups all going in the same direction, trying to find the one binding moment on the economy, which is the biggest issue at the next election.
But if you look at the DUP with Theresa May, they just turned around and said, "Don't give us ministerial seats in this mini coalition. Just give us £1 billion." Because you know what? We just love public money.
I mean, that was I can kind of see a confidence and supply deal. You know, everything is on the table at the next general election. At this moment in time, there is nobody's ruled out. Every deal is on the. Everything is there. We're still at that moment. After May, it will change, I think, but I do think at the moment, it's interesting now we've gone into recess. The Reform have gone with PMQs aren't really a thing, and then we're going to talk about the small boats again, and then we're going to talk about the small boats again, and then we're going to talk about the small boats again. Eventually, you're going to have to talk about other things, and the lack of policy that has been able to be kind of given out to the public isn't there. But some of it is, to be fair, some of it is, but it's not being communicated very well.
But once again, on the National Wigan show, right, I'm sure I'm right in saying that Wigan always only elects a third of the council per year. So if you look at Wigan's going to be great for Reform, isn't it? Because they'll win a load of seats. they can't possibly win the administration, right? So they can't. So we know that whatever happens in Wigan Borough, Reform won't win, right? We know they'll win lots of seats, but we know they can't possibly win the council. It's been difficult for Reform because they've had to go from zero to hero. Where they've literally gone in Warwickshire's a good example, where, you know, there can be few more striking examples of being new to this game than having a 19-year-old leader.
Oh yes,
I'm not criticising.
No, I actually quite like him, to be fair.
But you know, in terms of institutional knowledge, there is none.
That's the big phrase, institutional knowledge.
And that's been a major problem.
And I tell you now, if they take power or come into opposition in the Senate or up in Holyrood, they have a big problem, because that's real power. That is real budgets, that's actual influence on a huge amount of people. And if they don't know where the levers are, they're going to come unstuck, even if they're in opposition, because, you know, you've got to actually oppose, not just make a speech. You've got to use this institution, and they haven't got those people. I'm not saying they're not going to get those people, but as it stands right now, particularly in Wales and the Senate, I mean, if that is a very difficult institution to work around. I don't really like the Senate very much, but I mean, it's a huge budget. It's real power, and if they mess that up, they are finished.
My favourite thing about the Welsh Parliament or the Welsh Assembly is that it is built it's designed to look like the trees that elders used to sit under when they made decisions. Didn't happen in Wales, though.
No.
They just didn't. That didn't happen in Wales, right?
Well, they all pretend it did, and that's it.
I would suggest to you the climate in Wales is such that they never sat under trees discussing things.
No, definitely not.
It's just complete.
Yeah. My favourite is also they have tampons in men's toilets. Though it's none of those kind of institutions, but yeah. But this is the thing.
We've all been to clubs like that. No, I'm joking.
Well, your thoughts are you there?
That is a very rude joke.
There you go.
Very, very rude joke.
You started it.
Yeah,
Off-com.
absolutely. Okay.
We should not be left unsupervised.
Okay. This is the press preview. Apologies we haven't been to the front pages. We do have them. We just thought that Grenfell story was so important. We're going to go to a break. We'll be back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Talk. This is the press preview with Andre Walker and Pete Barnes. Pete, can I ask you the most dishonest question in media?
What have I found out in the news today?
i.e., what has been emailed to you to talk about? Have they emailed you?
No,
anything?
they've not actually. And to be fair, I've literally been talking about the news since about 7:30 this morning. So yeah, this is what I've just seen. So give me a chance just to get through it. But this is the mansion tax. This is on the cover of the Daily Telegraph. It's the second story. Mansion tax in chaos as thousands of homeowners will overturn levy. So if you qualified for the mansion,
look at the paper on the screen. It's the Wigan Evening Post.
Hey! I know him. I don't. It'd be funny if I did. But no. So basically, if your house came under the original mansion tax, which they brought in, you could actually appeal it. It's just saying here that over half of the people who have appealed will actually win their appeal, and it won't work.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that means that, again, this was not thought through. There was no actual, policy behind it. It was just, we need money.
I worry about these wealth taxes because the big problem is the vast majority of the world is not money. Right? I know this sounds silly, but whilst everything in this room has a monetary value, there is not enough money in the world for all the items that you could possibly sell. If everyone was to go, let's sell our houses to get the money in order to pay the mansion tax, nobody would buy the mansions, therefore there would be no money to collect.
Yeah. Welcome to the hypocrisy and the kind of contradictions within capitalism and the free market, I'm afraid. But particularly in the housing market as well, because it's all done on speculation. And it's like the oil market at the moment. There is still the same amount of oil in the kind of market as there was the day before the Iran war. It's all about whether your confidence in getting it from A to B. That's what actually drives things. It's not actually a shortage of things. But
no, I mean, quite often with all sorts of commodities, particularly on an island, the value of the commodity is based on your ability to bring it to market.
Yes.
I mean, I always give the example of Sierra Leone and bananas.
Yes.
Where 70% of them are just destroyed at the port because they just go, it's just not worth sticking them on the boat.
Yeah.
Because they have no value.
No, it's people have to try to get that into their heads, and it's not really complex. It's just you just have to kind of go with it, if you know what I mean. It's one of those things where it is faith more than anything.
I worry about wealth taxes because when you say somebody's a millionaire, quite often what that means is they live in a house and have a pension fund.
Yes.
And you think,
these days they've got a second floor.
Exactly. What is your ability? What is your ability to? I mean, do you know? I was only thinking this the other day about Angela Rayner.
Yeah.
Right. And she's probably thinking to herself, look, I'm not a rich person. I come off a council estate. I've got a disabled child. That 45 grand. Is not better in the government's pocket because I'm not a rich person. And my answer is, yes, but I never said you were. Yeah. It was you that said these people were rich.
Oh, yeah. So they don't remember when they had the whole problem of what is a working person.
Yeah.
This is exactly this one. These kind of catch-all phrases always trip people up when you have to start putting monetary value on things. If you ask somebody what is a rich person, they'll often say a millionaire, but £1 million is not what it used to be thanks to Liz Truss. No. Thanks for that, by the way. But yeah, it's literally one of those things where it's all about the purchasing power of the pound, and if it's not there, you can have all the money in the world, but it's still not worth as much as it was, which is why people who say live in London now on 40k are struggling.
Oh, without that.
Because the cost of everything else has gone up around it, and it's just bad policies. It's regulation. It's energy policy has crippled this country. But yeah, it's not great, I have to admit. But
let me just say this. Okay, so let's just read out about wealth, right? In the UK, you would need to earn roughly 55,000 a year before tax to be in the top 25% of earners. So you are, if you earn 55,000, you are rich.
Yeah.
Right. Now that's not a colossal amount of money for most people. By the way, after tax, that's going to be about 36,000.
Yes.
And so amazingly, the rich in this country, some of them will earn less than people on benefits.
Yes, and that is a big problem
because it's after tax.
Yeah, because work doesn't pay.
Yeah,
and that's the big one. But also, it's regional disparities are a huge problem. So, 50k in London, not very much. 50k in, I don't know, say in Wigan, you basically could buy the place. That kind of disparity is so far now that is the real problem. It is the gap between the rich and the wealth and the poor. But it's not that the poor are poor because the rich is rich. This is the narrative you've got to start hearing from the Greens, and you've got to hear it more from the Labour Party. Rachel Reeves has already started with it. This kind of, they've taken your money. They're rich because you're poor.
Yes.
That is not true.
No.
We have to kind of stop that narrative and fight back on that one very strongly, because that is why you get wealth taxes. That is how you get high taxes on everybody, and how working classes end up the most.
If you earn if you earn say 80,000 a year, and your house costs £600,000, and you pay in energy bills what, £4,000 a year, or whatever. You know, you've got you and your missus have a car. I mean, I can't see how you're rich.
No,
I mean, you know, it's not like you're going to be going out champagning every night.
It's what they used to call Theresa May called them the jams, just about managing.
Yeah,
one bill, like a boiler breaks, or you know, you suddenly have to get the car fixed, and you are basically scrambling.
Yeah,
that is the big problem. There are so many people in that group now that this is why things like energy price fluctuations hit us even harder, because we are literally clinging on to the budgets that we have.
Do you know anybody? Oh, sorry. How many people do you know who are truly rich? I mean, I know some people who are, but the vast majority of people, even if they're like, I've got a friend of mine, and he's how do I say this? How do I say this properly? He's lawyer to a very important person.
Right.
Very important person who lives in Windsor. And you know, he has a two-bedroom terrace house in Tooting, which is perfectly nice. Yeah. But I mean, when you see somebody who's partner of a major law firm that represents some of the richest and most powerful people on the earth, you would imagine that he's got a massive Bentley in a country estate. Yeah. But in fact, he doesn't.
No, and I think that's because we have a very kind of movie idea of what rich is. We think everybody's got like Scrooge McDuck, swimming in a swimming pool kind of full of cash. I think that is a big problem. But also, again, it is. You know, the idea of wealth just being a very showy thing. A lot of very, very rich people I know are actually very asset wealthy, but very cash poor.
Oh, yes.
That's going to be an even bigger problem for a lot of people who say our kind of generation when our parents kind of pass away and grandparents, because everything's all tied up. And then you got inheritance tax, which just cripples everybody. I think that is the most perverse tax that we've got. It's just ridiculous. But yeah, the thing is, you don't need really low taxes. You just need sensible taxes. You need taxation to be fair. So realistically, you don't need to pay an accountant to get around them. That's the big one. And you know, I'm not a big fan of flat taxes, but yeah, it's just that fairness. It doesn't make sense that I have to get up at stupid o'clock in the morning, go out to work for hours. I'm still going, and somebody gets to sit at home and earn benefits on my tax money. And yet I'm supposed to be thankful for it and think, you know, that's what I'm supposed to do.
And our quiz question for the day is, when we're talking about wealth taxes and whatever, on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, how many people in Britain would be better if they didn't go to work tomorrow and just went on benefits? Who would be richer as a result?
Oh, a significant amount.
6.5 million.
Is it really? Wow.
6.5 million people.
That is
would be better not bothering going into. Do you know what I thought? I was thinking, isn't it great these people do have the dignity to go out to work? And then I thought, wouldn't it be funny if they just didn't?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be just funny if they went, I'll tell you what we'll do. Tell you what we'll do. We won't be the decent people.
Do you know what we should have? Britain's Day Off. Do you like Ferris Bueller? We'll have Britain's Day Off.
Yeah.
Everybody just don't go, and then we'll just see what happens. Because I'm curious as to see what would happen, really. You know, some of those kind of experiments. But
front page of the Times. Okay, so Ed Miliband, that's that religious fundamentalist, as we call him, pagan religious fundamentalist. He may well give a licence to a North Sea gas field exploration. He's been forced to by the Prime Minister, hasn't he?
There is a
process.
I think this might be even something worse than that. I think he's given in because he wants a leadership bid. So he's after cabinet colleagues. They are absolutely furious with him at the moment because he's siphoning off all the departmental budgets. He might be trying to buy some friends back.
Okay.
I think that is a much bigger thing, because let's be real, Keir Starmer just does as he's told. And buy Ed Miliband, which I find quite funny. But let's not forget, this guy backed the green runway at Heathrow. You know, he's very good at...
Sorry, stop. Yeah. What is the green runway?
Oh, it's just the runway, but he said it was green now. He just did a complete U-turn on it about, what, 2 years, a year and a half ago?
So, right, in what way is it green?
It's not. It's just he kind of, you know, they did the whole kind of greenwashing, they call it. They kind of, we offset this and we did that. It's not. It's still a runway. It's still, an aeroplane's going off after it. And he did a massive whopping U-turn on it.
Do you know what?
Which he should have resigned over.
Have you heard what Elton John does?
Oh, here we go.
Right.
There's a start to a story.
This is brilliant. Right, so... This greenwashing thing where they go, we've saved X number of trees, as you know. It's just Amazonian rainforest that nobody's going to take down anyway. All that Elton John does is works out the amount of carbon and just buys a big lump of Amazon, and just goes, my plane would have taken this much carbon, and now I've bought carbon offsetting. Yeah. Basically, the tree is there. It has not moved. It has not changed, but it's now owned by Elton John. Yeah. So it's all good.
There's actually councils have bought bits of land that you can buy to offset your carbon when you buy a new house. Yeah, up and down in the UK. It's actually a thing. It's just showed the ridiculousness of this kind of green agenda where you can just buy your way out of it. It's nonsense. But yeah, I have to admit, I'm very glad we're drilling.
I've got to be honest with you. I want my own. I want
to stand on it. And this bit's mine.
Yeah. I want my own forest because I've got my air gun. I'm really irritating the neighbours using it in the garden.
I just want it to be like a chess square, and that's it. That's it. I'm not moving.
Absolutely, but well, actually, Pete, you've made me slightly depressed because
sorry.
Ed Miliband, you're saying, is just doing this to get the leadership so he can run riots.
I think he is actually, yeah. I think he's trying to buy some friends, he's trying to buy some favour, and he's trying to not look like the lunatic that he is in front of the public. I think he's trying to say, look, I get it. He's going to, I think he judges it all up in the little speech thing that he gives, where he's kind of like, oh, well, it's about the country, it's about the people. He does that kind of, I've got the British interest at heart kind of nonsense. But what this is the leadership bid. That's all it is.
Yes. Just to be clear, when we're talking about people on benefits, we always get people getting in touch who are genuinely disabled. I just want to be clear that I don't know exactly. Well, I suspect I know what Pete's going to say here, but I'm deeply concerned about people who are thrown on the scrap heap, age 16, 17, 18, who end up with mental health problems just because they're eating and drinking and they're depressed and they've got no purpose in life. Somebody who's had an industrial accident clearly is going to be on benefits. Right?
Yeah, my thing is why I don't like people who take the mickey on the benefit stuff is because they're taking that guy's money. The person who has had the industrial accident, who genuinely needs it, who needs all the help, is not getting the help because it's going to people that don't deserve it. We have to get out of our heads that just because we criticise the thing that you're on doesn't mean we're having a go at you, or that it's somehow a personal thing. This is why with the Labour Party couldn't cut $5 billion off the welfare bill, because this is the narrative that comes out. We have to take a step back and say, actually, there's a more nuanced position to be had, but unfortunately we just like screaming at each other.
By the way, I completely destroyed. I've told you the story about when I destroyed Charles Kennedy on the TV.
No, I didn't.
Right. So what they were saying was that what they wanted to do was they wanted to have a new council tax, which was going to be 5% of your income for the whole household, capped at £100,000 in earnings. So I went on the TV and I went, I like to call it youth tax.
Yeah.
And he went, and Charles Kennedy's face, I went, and I made up the example, I went, I earn £25,000 a year and I live with 3 other people who all earn £25,000 a year. We would be liable at the moment for council tax of £1,500. That will go up to £5,000, whereas a pensioner would not be liable. And it was really funny. I think it was Jeremy Martin turned around to him and went, what do you think of that, Charles? And I thought, I looked at his face and I could see him just go, that's the end of that policy.
Pretty much.
That's the end of that policy.
Yeah, but again, I go back to the triple lock. I'm actually really disappointed in Reform that they could have had a moment there. We could have actually, done something good, but unfortunately they didn't do it. But again, the youth tax, all these things are youth taxes. Everything is a youth tax. It's ridiculous.
And the other point that we've made is this: the other person is you. That's what Angela Rayner discovered. We need to tax the rich. We need to stop property speculation.
Yes,
the other person is you. It's you.
I love how David Lammy, when he was Foreign Secretary, forgot to put Britain first, and then you had the homeless minister who made people homeless. You had the anti-corruption minister who was corrupt. And then you had the housing minister who didn't pay taxes on that. I thought you've really
she genuinely did not know that the other person was her.
No,
she didn't realise that.
No.
Anyway, the other person's going to pay. Angela, the other person is you. More next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Okay, we've got a bit of good news, Pete. Pete Barnes is staying with us until 1 o'clock because we're struggling to get people to phone in because it is Good Friday.
Yeah.
But Pete, we are able to go on for a kebab on the way home because Orthodox Good Friday is the 10th of April. So why don't we just do Orthodox?
Yes.
I
do love a workaround.
No. Orthodox Easter Sunday is the 12th. Right.
The 12th.
We're gonna be Eastern Orthodox for the purposes of kebabbing tonight.
Wow.
Okay. Let's go to this story in the Daily Star. I'm extremely concerned about this because I think that football tickets and tickets to World Cup final being $8 or $9 grand each is one thing.
Yeah.
I worry very much about young people getting into football. When I went to school in Liverpool, I can't remember how much it was to get into Anfield or get into Goodison Park. Most of my friends were Liverpool supporters. No, actually, most of my friends were Everton supporters in Catholic school. But we used to go to both. You just walked up and gave them a fiver or whatever it was. Yeah. Now, I went to Arsenal because Philip Ullman gave me his tickets. And what is very clear to me, and I think this is how they're going to redevelop the Kop in Liverpool, it's going to be all the package. So it's sort of £300 for a ticket, and you get your lunch, you get a beer, you get whatever, which is all perfectly good. But I just worry about local kids being able to get in, and if it just becomes a corporate free for all, don't we damage our national sport?
Oh, I think we're already there. Again, I'm not a football fan, but I like rugby, but it's exactly the same in that. It's exactly the same in tennis. Every sport has turned into this because it has become so commercialised because of television. It's all about the TV rights. It's all about that kind of thing, and also it does seem to be a bit of snobbery that it's become kind of like because football's always seen as a kind of proper kind of grassroots local community kind of thing, but in reality you have to have a lot of money to get a season ticket these days, even at the most kind of low level club.
But if I look at I know Warrington Wolves because my brother was a stadium announcer there. Obviously you're a Wigan Warriors fan. Rugby, obviously, for those who don't know, but the Super League makes a lot of money off TV rights, and so basically to get to a Wigan Warriors match, which in terms of rugby is like seeing AC Milan, isn't it? Right, and it's not going to cost you a huge amount of money. And so what it seems to me that rugby has done, correct me if I'm wrong, were if you compare Wigan Warriors to Manchester City, well, probably comparable if you like. Manchester City has gone down the route of charging people a fortune to get in and earning TV rights as well. Wigan Warriors have gone down. We've got the TV rights. We've got the replica shirt sales and all this. But fundamentally, it's not normal Wiganers can get into our ground.
Yeah, I think that's right because the football economy is its own thing. I mean, you could study football economics at university as its single degree.
Not a good one.
But still, it is interesting because it is it's all about player value and all this kind of thing, which I find it weird if we give prices to people and yet we don't think that's slavery. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It is very concerning because also it is access to sport has been proven to kind of not only help mental health but physical health obviously, but it's all about community cohesion. It is getting people into the game as well because it's not just actually watching the game, it is also being part of the team, the part of the kind of the supporters clubs and all that kind of thing. Even those kind of things are becoming very difficult to get into because of the price of everything, and yet it's only going to go up because of obviously the cost of living and all the cost of running these things is astronomical.
I mean, rugby is a smaller sport, and the pay is much lower than the Premier League. And the Premier League, I think, can argue it is a global thing.
Oh yeah.
Mind you, of course, the Super League is international, whereas the Premier League is not.
That's very true.
God bless Perpignan.
Perpignan. Oh, that's a great weekend. Not that I remember any of them. There you go.
Do you know my brother, when they used to come out to so Perpignan's in Spain, isn't it?
It's Toulouse. Yeah.
But they speak French or the other way around.
Yeah.
And he used to play the song to the theme tune to Allo Allo.
Oh,
when
wow.
they used to come out and play. But to me it does feel it does feel like rugby as a smaller sport is still owned by its community. And I just feel like, I don't know. I mean, I just wonder whether a kid from Anfield can go and watch Liverpool.
I really don't think they can. I really don't. And I do think you're right. It's this kind of corporate packages. It's having the experience thing. But look at what they did to the new Wembley. The middle of it is all corporate tickets. And if you actually go to a match or anything there, it's dead because they've not been able to sell all the tickets or whatever. So therefore, the kind of it affects the atmosphere. It ratchets up the price of everything. And it annoys me because it just seems grubby. You know, particularly when you look at UEFA and the way they run the World Cup. My God, you talk about
they're
corruption.
all dodgy.
Yeah, they're all dodgy
as hell.
Yeah.
Do you know that Sepp Blatter?
Yeah, I was just thinking of his name and I was like, it's something Platter, but no, it's Blatter. That's it.
Do you remember what's his name? Lee Nelson. Where he goes, there you go, Simon Brodkin. There you go. North Korea. Yeah. North Korea 2026.
Oh, I know.
There you go, Sepp. There's all the money.
Yeah.
Throws it. Yeah. And Sepp goes like that.
Yeah.
And they get the
crazy.
photo of it. That was the end of his career, wasn't it?
I think there was that, or there was the resignation letter to Theresa May. Was that him where he gave her the pink slip? Wasn't that?
Oh no, I'm saying that was the end of Sepp Blatter.
Sorry, Sepp Blatter, right? Okay.
No, Simon Brodkin. I thought it was great when he got what's his name's yacht and he renamed it BHS Destroyer.
Yes, I thought that. Yeah, I have to admit he is very funny. I will say that. Right, what's next?
Okay, well, let's go to the front page of the iPaper, which is the one that's a real newspaper, and they're saying that the King is going to raise the issue of Donald Trump being negative to Britain. I'm afraid, Pete, I'm on Donald Trump's side.
I've been on Donald Trump's side since, Trump won, really. Oh, the idea that you could just kind of dangle the king in front of him like he's a pair of keys to a baby, I think is absolutely ridiculous. It just shows that they have no idea how to, handle him, but also understand that he actually has a point. Yeah. You know, they make up 62% of funding to NATO. They get nothing in return other than insulting him, insulting America, and then saying, "Oh, please, can you defend us from Russia, please?"
Exactly.
It's ridiculous. It is entitlement. It is riding on the coattails of World War II, thinking that if you all have a meeting, you've done something. It's ridiculous. They are the definition of it should have been an email.
Yeah,
that's what they are.
I've got to be. Look, I've said this before. Look, the purpose of NATO was that America... Actually, do you know what I was going to say? America won the Second World War, but I was talking to my mate. He said, let's be honest, the Soviet Union made it to Berlin first. Yeah. They won the Second World War. I would suggest that that's probably not a bad argument, actually.
Yeah, well, they won the Europe bit. It was the dropping of the Hiroshima, the atom bomb. But again... The point that Trump is really doing here is saying you need us, and it's like these kind of rubbing Europe's face in it. This kind of just go and take the Strait of Hormuz. He knows that Europe can't do that. That they do not have the mass to be able to do it, the industrial base to do it, the just basic helmets to do it, basically. And he's saying,
some of them are helmets.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, was it Germany that gave loads of helmets to Ukraine?
Yeah,
they had to give them back or something. I can't remember. But this is the point. Is he's saying like, look, you've got to get your house in order because this is the world. This is the real world. It's not all nice little meetings and conferences and stuff. It's actual doing stuff.
But if you think about it, the United States of America is 4 miles from Russia, right? Yeah. When we think of it the other way around,
yes,
nobody ever thinks of it the other way around. But also, it's not just because of the map, it's because of the population centres. The vast majority of the population of the Soviet Union were in Europe, right? The vast majority of them. But the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. No. Therefore... America isn't as bothered what Russia's doing. Let's be honest. Very few Americans give a rat's backside who controls Kiev. They just don't.
No.
Now, if there is going to be a global alliance, there has to be a global alliance. Not just you defend us from Vladimir Putin, who you don't care about, and we will do nothing for you.
Yeah, because alliances aren't friendships, they're partnerships, they're a deal. This is the thing, is you bring something, they bring something, and also, when we need it, it's available and you can actually do something. Yeah. The big problem is, Europe talked a good game, the UK in particular. Look at all these things we've got. We can't even get one destroyer there. I mean, the state of Trident is embarrassing. It is so out of date. I mean, we had nuclear submarines that didn't have any missiles on them.
I know.
It is absolutely ridiculous, because this thing, if they pull out of NATO, we lose the anti-gravity bombs, which are in Turkey and Germany. We lose the nuclear umbrella. We are sitting ducks. And yet again, we're poking literally poking the Russian bear. And this is how they're behaving. It is careless, reckless, and is going to not end well if we're not careful.
If you're gonna pick a fight with somebody, you know, it's worth having some military.
Yes.
I mean, I would suggest just a basic.
Britain at the minute is the kind of, you know, like when you're at a playground and there's always the yappy one, and then they always hide behind the massive one, and when the fight's about to start, that's Britain. That's who we are at the moment. And you know, we keep. We want to be able to kind of sit at the top table without paying the bill or throwing a punch. And you can't do that in the real world. You're not. It's just ridiculous to think you can. And it just shows, even today, that they want to try to take the Strait of Hormuz. The first thing they did, let's have a conference with Yvette Cooper. I mean, first of all, who remembers Yvette Cooper? Who remembers we have a foreign secretary? She's been missing in action.
That's right.
Where's she been? I mean, don't get me wrong, she'd only make it worse, but it's nice that, she turns up.
Right. That's right. What other ones? What other ones have
Name anybody else in the cabinet.
Who's that one who looks like Meatloaf? Who's the Attorney General? Well, anyway, we'll work out which one the Meatloaf one is in a minute. But until then, we'll be back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Wow, that's interesting. The head of the Myanmar junta has just been nominated as president.
Oh.
Hey!
Welcome to 2026.
I love that. I bet that was a fulsome process.
I was going to say, yeah, I bet that was free and fair.
Okay, what about Back to the Moon on the front page of The front page of the Sun.
Yeah, the Sun, yes.
Okay.
I love this. I think this is the future. This is literally what the human race is supposed to do. It is boldly going where no man has gone before. It is...
Except they have.
Yeah, except
Apollo
they have.
13.
But no, but this is about kind of testing, can we stay longer? Because this is about going to Mars. This is about, you know, the next step of human, exploration, which is what the human race does. We explore. We look over the fence. The idea that, you know, we've got to, you know, we've got issues here, so why are you doing that? We have got so much from the space program. You know, things like memory foam mattresses, for example, would not exist without the space race.
And do you have a memory foam mattress?
I do.
And why have a memory foam mattress?
Because I you know, it's lumbar support. It's very nice. But also things like, say, for example, robots who do surgery, that kind of stuff. It's all from the space race.
But hang on, if you pull... Right. Don't you have, like, the imprint of whoever you were with last night?
It's not that good. It's not that good. It's not like goo.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, but this is the thing. It's like, there's so many
It's like, well, I know she had a big bum, but it was 2 in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, you're still stuck there and then you're trying to climb your way out like a turtle that's got on his back. But no, again, I actually stayed up. I watched I've watched most of the rockets go off. I actually am a big space nerd, because even if you want to look at it from a kind of like capitalist way, the moon mining and the amount of satellites that are going up there in terms of energy supply, it's all the future. It is literally all geared to look up. I mean, Google have got, I think it's the solar... what's it called? The solar something. Well, basically, they're just going to make sure that all solar panels on Earth are irrelevant. We'll just put giant ones in the space.
I agree.
You know, this is what we should be doing. This is what we should have the green agenda.
Is if your house is under the massive...
Well, I mean, it's quite high up.
Well, I'd still worry.
Yeah, we still worry. But I think I'm sure there's one person in the world that has actually been hit by space junk.
Is that true?
Yeah, I'm sure there's one person. It's a woman in Pennsylvania, I'm sure it is. And it's
I had a horrible dream the other day that I was in... I don't know why, I was in the Albert Hall. And I became convinced one of the lights was about to fall on me.
Yes, because they've got the kind of... It's like the weird shapes of them, so they do the sound, isn't it? That's what the...
Yeah, I mean, I just thought... I just looked up and thought, if that thing falls now, I'm going to die.
Well, anything could happen literally where you're sat right now. Not to put that into your head.
So just to be clear, a piece of space junk could, without warning, take me out right now.
Well, not again realistically. Well, most of it burns up in the atmosphere, but this one has been able to get through.
But it would get through this building, wouldn't it?
We do have a big problem of space junk, actually. A lot of dead satellites, a lot of that kind of thing. So most things that are going up into space now have to bring something else down with them. It's like, you know, it's like the migrant deal. You have to take one when you come back.
Is that right?
Yeah. They have these big nets and they kind of scoot all in.
How does it work in terms of international agreements? Because presumably we are removing space junk and China isn't.
Yes.
Is that the way it works?
Well, kind of, yeah. But actually trying to do quite a lot of it because they're taking all satellites to see what we had.
Oh,
so there's a lot of kind of industrial espionage is actually quite common.
There is nothing more Xi Jinping than what you've just said.
I know, yeah. If you think about it, yeah.
Well, surely they're not clearing up space junk. Yeah, but they want to steal the technology. Oh,
of course they are.
Yeah, of course. Right. How did I not know that?
But no, it's actually quite a big problem because it's about whether we can get the rockets and everything up because of all the space junk. But yeah, the odds of getting hit by it are very they're astronomically, out of range.
Isn't there a risk? Somebody told me there was a risk of one satellite hitting another satellite and it smashing them both smashing to bits, and then the bits smashing other satellites, and then them smashing, and just this effect where what happens is we're just surrounded by shards of metal in the lower Earth orbit.
Yeah, this is literally the problem. Yeah,
and we will literally have to spend 1,000 years clearing it up before we can go.
Yeah, I mean, we've ruined space before we got there, realistically. And that's one thing that I think Jeff Bezos has been really pushing, is actually tidying up space. You know, I find that quite funny. We have to tidy space before we've even got out of it. But I feel that's a very human race thing.
I wanted to send nuclear waste into space, but apparently it's not a very good idea.
Where do you think we got it from? But, a star is nuclear waste, technically. Stardust is... Well, they always say, you made of stardust. Yes, nuclear waste. Yeah, which is basically what it is.
I think my favourite story is the little boy who built his own nuclear power station. using americium.
Yes, is this? Yeah, and then
the Scout.
Yes, then did he have like the? Was it in America or something? Where they then have all the authorities turning up because he nearly went. He nearly.
What he did was right. So. How does your smoke detector know when it's running out of batteries? It doesn't. It has run out of batteries. It has a backup generator powered by nuclear waste, americium. Yeah. Right. So it starts bleeping because the americium generator is turned on. So what he did as a clever spark was he bought lots of smoke detectors through charity, gave them to local people, but removed the americium from it, and created a thermoelectric nuclear generator in his shed. Yeah, his shed is now.
This is why parents need to know what their children are up to.
That's right. Okay, well, look. That was the press preview. I'll tell you what we should do. We should just very quickly go to the front page of The Guardian. This was the rebuke Donald Trump gave to Emmanuel Macron. He says he's just a joker and that NATO is now a paper tiger. It is a very significant concern. But I have to say, I am with Donald Trump on this.
Yeah, I'm not taking Emmanuel Macron seriously after the sunglasses at Davos. I mean, nobody should wear sunglasses inside and then start giving lectures on literally anything. And Macron can just go away. France's army is a ridiculous situation.
I heard Paris Hilton used to wear sunglasses inside because sometimes lights would get some vision of what she looked like underneath. Wow. Okay, that's press preview. Okay, if you're still with us on Thursday night, then Pete normally gives his final thought, but we got an hour. I just wanted to show you this Daily Express front page. Looking at this, why has he done this?
I don't
this
know.
Funeral director.
I genuinely don't know.
Because I mean, you can't just leave the bodies in the cold storage forever.
Yeah, I presume this is something. It's a kind of an industry that's like a Wild West situation where there's not much regulation, there's not much oversight on it, so therefore this would happen.
What one would have assumed you could do is go, well, let's just put 5 bodies into one coffin, but you can't do that.
No, you can't, yeah.
So ultimately, if you don't send the bodies off to be cremated, they just end up in your fridge.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, that's not a comfortable thought.
Although there was one lady, and we'll talk about this after the break, but one lady who thinks her baby was thrown in the bin.
Oh, God, that's awful.
It really is awful. OK, Pete is staying with us. 0344 499 1000, back in a mo.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, so this is not the press preview, but Pete Barnes has hung around because we're now into Good Friday, but not for us, Pete.
No.
Because we've decided to do Good Friday, Orthodox Good Friday on the 10th of April.
I can't remember the last time I had a Good Friday off, actually.
I'll tell you what I got a bit annoyed about. I normally, on Good Friday, actually go to my favourite curry place because I always think that if you're going to have a vegetarian meal, actually, curry places are the best place.
That's true, actually. Yeah, I never thought that.
And then I said to the bloke, I said, what about the vegetable karahi? And he said, it's not vegetarian.
Oh.
And I said to him, what? And he goes, no. He said, it's not designed to be a vegetarian product. It's designed to be a vegetable product. Sauce. Yeah. I make all the karahi sauce with meat and then put some on the veg, some on the chicken, some on the...
Yeah.
Anyway, I think what I will do, I will observe the vegetarian. Do you know what the best bit about being a Catholic is?
I mean, that's a sentence.
during Lent, what they try and do is force you to be a vegan as a punishment.
Yeah, this is how bad it could be.
Your atonement for all the things that you've done bad in the world is that you are now going to be forced to be a vegan.
I have to admit that I don't think I've ever given anything up for Lent or anything like that. I'll
tell you what,
this is always weird that my parents always forced the no meat on Good Friday thing, and I don't know.
You're Protestant, aren't you?
Yeah. It's just a. I think it's just a Christian thing.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so. I'm no expert, obviously, but yeah, I was like, I just want to put.
So
I never. Do you know what you say? You can't have something. That is what you want.
but I never ate meat on a Friday at all during my childhood ever.
Yeah, because it's supposed to. It's usually fish and chips on it.
It's not particularly difficult because you if you go to a Catholic school, they're not going to serve you meat on a Friday.
That's true, yeah.
Probably do now.
Yeah.
But and then we just went to the chippy anyway, so it wasn't a big deal. Although no, the only time we didn't go to the chippy on a Friday is if for any reason the priest was coming round to visit, which didn't happen very often, as you might imagine.
Sorry, I forget you lived in an Agatha Christie novel.
But what my mum would do was go to the market and buy fish that was more offensively smelling than any other. So the whole house stank of fish. So it's just made very, very clear.
That's amazing. I love that.
I mean, actually,
the passive aggressiveness of mothers will never cease to entertain me.
It's amazing to think to yourself that she thought, look, we do always eat fish on a Friday, but let's just make sure we've made that clear to him.
Yeah, I bet she also made you like hoover your bedroom. He was not going in the bedroom, but you somehow had to tidy it up just in case. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
My favourite story was one that Lois Perry told me. She said,
careful.
She said when she moved into a new house, she wanted the Exorcist to come. I don't know why, but anyway, she wanted the Exorcist to come.
Yeah.
And he said. All right, he said, should I just go around? What? She said, I won't come with you, just go around and do it, but throw in holy water. And then he said, okay, there's a teenage boy in one of the bedrooms and he's still in bed. Do you want me to ignore that room? And she went, absolutely not. She went, he's committed more sin in that room than you. And he said he woke up to the holy water being flowed all over.
Oh my God. Particularly if you were hungover, that is not a nice way to wake up.
No, and you're thinking, sorry, am I on drugs? What's going on here?
Yeah.
Okay, look, let's talk a little bit about this. Let's go to Simon Dudley, because he was the leader of the Royal Board of Windsor Maidenhead. In fact, he was the deputy leader, I think, when I was political advisor to the Royal Board of Windsor Maidenhead. I've known him for a certain amount of time, and he's been sacked over his comments over Grenfell. Take it away, Nigel Farage.
Simon Dudley, did you say you are sacked because of his comments?
I haven't spoken to him. He's under Richard Tice's department. Richard appointed him housing spokesman, given his depth of experience in developing new towns, but the comments were deeply inappropriate. They were, frankly, rather shocking to many people, and Richard has dealt with it.
he told him to go, or did he offer to resign?
No. What I've done in this party, I've got a leader of Scotland, a leader of Wales, I've got 4 people who've taken on their own departments, and they're in charge of those departments. And this takes us so far away from the old criticism of it being a one-man band. It isn't. Richard Tice has dealt with it.
OK, Richard Tice has sacked him, right.
So Richard Tice has sacked Simon Dudley. I repeat the comment. And look, I've had run-ins with Simon Dudley, as many people have, and I've always said to him, in fact, I said to him privately once, what you should do, Simon, is every time you have a good idea politically, do the opposite.
Yes.
Right.
Or tell somebody else.
Yeah. But his central point that regulation does not equal improvement, he is right.
Oh, without
about
a
that.
doubt. Without a doubt.
And, you know, and all the regulations that were put on before Grenfell did not stop. I mean, what I drove past Grenfell one day. I mean, it was a shock to see this. I mean, it looked like a war.
Yeah.
You know, and to think that building was signed off by a fire inspector.
Yeah.
Every single material was subject to regulation. Now, remember that that the inquiry into Grenfell Tower said that there are too many quangos with too many small fiefdoms that they are responsible for. So we're setting up a new quango to deal with it.
Yeah, so they basically, the idea is that they kind of, they do what they're doing with the NHS thing, they put it all into one big one. But as everybody knows, that never works.
No.
It doesn't work. And like I said, you can have all the regulations in the world, but if they aren't followed, it doesn't make an ounce of difference.
But I actually think with Grenfell, in a sense, they all were followed. What happened was, nobody had a holistic view, which was, does this bloody thing work?
Yeah.
Right.
Because again, it was too broken down.
Yeah, broken down.
Yeah, too broken down. Everybody's got their own little bit of it, and nobody said, we should talk to that bot, and we should talk to this bit, and all, you know, actually get together in a room and make sure it all works. I think that's a really good point.
If the end result of Grenfell Tower is that you now can't talk about Grenfell Tower because it's offensive, you know, what are we going to learn?
Yeah, I also think that the inquiry after it, if you remember, that they wanted they didn't want this particular judge, and it became very kind of what was it? Was it Cohen Dent? Cohen Dent, she was the MP, and they wanted her to run it, and it was all kind of Jeremy Corbyn-esque thing. It became a kind of rich versus poor kind of that narrative. It didn't actually become about, well, how do we make sure that the houses and the flats are safe? We didn't stay on topic.
But I never knew. But the fire inspector should have. I didn't realise the reason these buildings are bare, ugly concrete is because that is what stops them from burning down. Because what happens... So you go into these stairwells, and of course, you and I have always gone, God, this looks a bit crap.
Yeah.
But the reason it has concrete stairs and steel rail is there's nothing to set fire to.
Yes, because if you think about it, you've got to get out of the buildings and all that kind of thing. And
so the way Grenfell Tower was originally designed, and look, as I say, I just look at these buildings and go, God, that's ugly. But what happens is, once you get in your flat, if your flat gets sets on fire, you just shut the door and nobody cares.
Yes.
And what they do, and the way Grenfell Tower was designed, was if there is a fire in one flat, then the fire brigade go to that flat and put out the fire.
Yeah.
And it's just a concrete box.
Yeah.
Well, of course, the bloody cladding. So nobody sat down and went, but this building shouldn't be clad at all.
Yes.
Nobody said that.
Yeah, basically, you connected all of it together.
Yes.
Because, again, nobody bothered to talk to each other, but we didn't have that conversation. That was not the narrative that was in the public domain. It was all about, you know, about rich versus poor, and, you know, you can't say this about that group and all the rest of it. I will say... The Grenfell is one of the things I got very, very wrong, because I just thought it was another building on fire. I didn't realise just how big of a story that was actually going to become. If you remember, it was just after the 2017 general election.
Yeah.
Theresa May had just become Prime Minister, and she didn't go.
I mean,
and that was a huge thing.
I think that has always been a sense, rightly or wrongly, that unsafe cladding was put on this building because poor people are ugly and they needed to be hidden away.
Yeah. And the reality...
I mean, I think that's probably unfair.
Yeah,
but...
the thing is, if you go into a lot of these buildings now, they're actually very nice inside. Yeah. I think it's a very London thing where it looks terrible from the outside, but actually when you go in, they've been all
where I live, and many people will be familiar with it, in the centre of Windsor, they built Ward Royal, this sort of 1960s concrete thing. And it has to be said, I've got a friend of mine, Aaron, who wanted to move into Ward Royal, but it is very ugly. There's no doubt about it. And I said to him, I said, look, I would live in there if I was originally from Windsor.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the reason, because everyone knows they're quite good flats. I mean, if you're from Wigan and you move there and you go, here, mum and dad, look at this, right? It's not that great. But a lot of these places, I'm sure Grenfell Tower, actually, if you had a flat, I bet they were of quite a high standard.
Yeah, probably.
Assuming they were kept up to date.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think it is kind of... It is that mentality that we have that something, if it doesn't look nice, then it's not very, it's not worth the money. And that is wrong, I have to admit. But the way that certain people used Grenfell and they weaponised it to push other narratives, I thought was actually quite disgraceful. But I think it's actually worse than what Simon Dudley said, if I'm being honest.
But it becomes quite difficult when I mean, I've always been very alive to the Hillsborough thing.
Yeah.
Where I would say personally that the Liverpool Labour Party sought to exploit Hillsborough. And they weren't happy it happened. Let's just be clear, right? Yeah. But when Norman Bettison was the man behind the lies about the Liverpool fans that were printed in the Sun, he deliberately lied to Kelvin Mackenzie, whatever way you look at it. He was then made Chief Constable of Merseyside. Now, if you really cared...
Yeah.
And I always felt that the reason they wanted to exonerate Norman Bettison, and people may find this controversial, is because they wanted to blame Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah.
And there is now a widespread view in Liverpool that Hillsborough was effectively deliberately created by Margaret Thatcher in order to discredit the city of Liverpool.
Yes.
And that is a general and prevailing view.
I completely agree, because I remember when it was the Hillsborough inquiry, I remember I said the most predictable inquiry came up with the most predictable result. Because it was the narrative. It wasn't about the truth. It wasn't about actually trying to make sure that something like that doesn't happen again. It was about making sure that the narrative stuck, which is my big fear with the grooming gangs. Is actually, we're not going to get anywhere with it. Every inquiry ends up like this because we don't take the politics out of things, and also, like you said, people weaponize them and they use them for their own gain.
Are you one of these people who's becoming increasingly sceptical of public inquiries?
I've never really been a big fan of them.
Why? Tell me why you hate them, because what happens is, I'll tell you why I hate them. So as an example, in the case of Hillsborough, I think there were some quite easy things you could have done. Properly change the law to make sure that police officers were, say, financially responsible for their own incompetence, and not ending Norman Bettison's career, and there were things like that. But in the end, we've just spent decades paying lawyers to argue over granular detail, whereas actually the key detail was the bloke who lied to the press about Liverpool supporters was now the bloody Chief Constable of Merseyside. Yeah. The number one Satan to Liverpool had not just exonerated but made the head of policing in Liverpool.
Yeah, my big thing with them is also we do all of that and then we don't follow through.
No.
We do the risk assessment and then we don't do anything about it. That is my big problem with them, and they become a kind of, the COVID one is a prime example. It just becomes a kind of protecting yourself. It becomes, they don't actually, because they're never really sought to what are you actually trying to get at. Do you want prosecutions? Do you want a fact-finding thing? Do you want this, that? They just kind of, people get so angry about it, so they have a public inquiry and people go, well, now what? What do you actually want from it? And this is why when they actually get formed, they should have a very clear end goal and implementation period.
But there's always things like this where families and whatever are very upset, rightly so. I mean, you look at sort of Michael Barrymore situation with Stuart Lubbock. Look, at the end of the day, the family of Stuart Lubbock believed that he was raped and murdered. Yeah. Right. I would suggest to you that if you meet up with a group of gay guys and go back to their house and get drunk with them, the fact that you end up having sex with them is probably not something that comes as a surprise to you.
Yes.
Now, whether your family are aware you do that is an entirely different thing. And then getting drunk and falling into the pool. When they say there's no justice, I feel also there's no justice for Michael Barrymore, because this is a man who will be continually hounded by these people for the rest of his life because they simply do not accept. But as I say, you're in a nightclub, you get chatted up by 5 gay blokes and go back for a party. Come on.
Yes, yeah.
Realistically.
Yeah. And it's I get why obviously the family won't let it go. Of course you understand it. But at some point the law kind of has to step in and say enough.
Yes.
I really do think that, because again, you just keep living in the grief, you live in it, and then because of that, you get more kind of solidified in your position.
But you turn around and as an example, I mean, Barrymore's a good example, because the family will sort of say, yeah, but my son died.
Yeah.
Yes, but Barrymore didn't kill him.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. They're looking for justice where there isn't any.
Yes.
Right? They're looking for some kind of outcome and somebody to be held accountable for a bad thing that happened. That's not always the case.
And actually, returning to Grenfell, the problem with Grenfell was that nobody was responsible.
Yeah.
Because the system was so ludicrous. And we return to the Dudley point, which is, if what you're going to do now is just regulate, it's not working. I always give the example of those clothing shops around Strangeways in Manchester. They brought in the minimum wage. It was not being enforced. The Pakistani women upstairs were all on £1 an hour. You know, all illegal labour and all that sort of. Oh, but we've got rid of poverty because we brought in a minimum wage. Yeah, but nobody's observing it.
Yeah, exactly. And the big thing is, when you look at the regulations they brought in the housing sector, it's punishing developers who had nothing to do with this, and therefore it's actually hurting the people they think they're helping. This is always the great irony of it. It's like when they give money out to these to trade unions and things like that, because you've just sent inflation through the roof. You've not got a pay rise.
No.
You know, this is the thing. It's because it's driven by grievance. It's not driven by actual kind of getting a fair bit of society on any kind of justice.
We return to the final point about Grenfell Tower. We need more inspectors. No, we need the inspectors who signed that thing off to go.
Yes.
Not to get a bigger budget. Because whoever he is,
fire somebody.
Yeah, well,
fire somebody. Why do we not do that anymore?
The bloke who went, this looks safe.
Yeah.
Surely, if you'd have told me 2 details, that building was designed to have no cladding as a fire safety mechanism, and somebody wants to clad it. That's all I would have needed to know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all that would have been.
We didn't need all of that, all the rest of the fuss. That's the truth. But because we don't actually hold anybody accountable, we have to have this nonsense. And like you said, because it's not obviously one single person most of the time. Again, not an accident. That's always the big thing. You know, I look at the West Midlands police chief. He got paid out.
No, Craig Guilford.
He basically allowed all this kind of stuff to go on, and he got given money, and he's still allowed to go back and help the police if he wants to.
He will
How
do.
is that a thing?
He will do.
You know, and you wonder why you've then got kids running all over Clapham doing God knows what, because yet again, there's no consequences to anything.
Oh no, absolutely. And what will happen is that if a store owner attempts to protect his property, the police will turn up and nick it.
Oh yeah. It's one of the things in the papers is Marks and Spencers have gone absolutely mental because they did have to shut their store down, but if I remember right, they tried to bring a private prosecution as well because they are absolutely sick to the back teeth of it, and I don't blame these companies. It doesn't matter whether there's a multinational or a small mom and pop store. The reality is these are having an impact on our society.
I have a go hero now goes to court. Anyway, we're going to be back in a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Talk, and you are welcome to call us 0344 499 1000. For once, nobody has. Yeah. We've got 10 slots available. I'm not proud, I can admit it, which is why I spoke earlier to Adam Coleman, who is a columnist at New York Post, and we were talking about Donald Trump and all of the issues around the Attorney General and indeed around what's going on in Iran. Let's have a look. The Straits of Hormuz need to be reopened, and I have to say this, and I've said it before, the United States of America is 4 miles from Russia, right? People forget there's the other way around. The only reason why the United States of America was involved in NATO and kept boots on the ground in Europe is because the majority of the Soviet population lived in Europe. The Soviet Union has now gone. There is no reason for the United States of America to support NATO unless it's a global alliance that supports America. Adam Coleman from the New York Post. I mean, why would somebody from Alabama defend Rammstein in Germany when nobody's going to support the United States of America in the Middle East?
I mean, it's a good question. And actually, it's a very good point that you bring up, and people forget how close Alaska is to when it comes to Russia. Much of this, the way I kind of see it from an American perspective is that the United States military is basically the guard of the world. Yeah. Essentially, we're the police of the world, right? The world's police. And so it seems like everyone is fine with that position. And that's one of Donald Trump's complaints, is that we are set up as the world's police, yet we're a part of this organization that we're also chipping equally, yet we're paying the most for the world's security. And here we are trying to get involved in when it comes to taking out Iran because they are a threat to the global order. So where's the support? I thought we were some sort of ally.
But one of the big problems, Adam, is very simply this. Yeah. The Japanese attack Pearl Harbor, right? And the United States of America sends the majority of its troops to free Europe, right? Not to fight Japan. The reality is there is a huge arrogance here, which is, let's be honest, Europeans own America as well, therefore we have a special place in Americans' hearts. And I honestly think that when Barack Obama came along, rightly or wrongly, suddenly there was a wake-up call, which was, hey, you know what? The leadership of the United States of America might not always be a bunch of Irish, German, British people. And ultimately, if there was now a similar war, I think the American public would demand the majority of people fought Japan, not Hitler, because bluntly, it's not all about white Europeans anymore.
Maybe that's the case. This is all hypothetical.
Yeah, sure.
But if we speak as far as this particular conflict and what I see coming from, let's just say Western Europe, the Western powers, what I see is general weakness. What I see is them understanding that no one's disagreeing that Iran wasn't a threat. That's one thing I haven't heard someone saying, no, actually, Iran was not a threat. No, there was definitely nothing to worry about there when it comes to nuclear weapons. So no one disagrees on the point. But what they don't want to do is actually get involved in, quote unquote, someone else's mess. Well, we're supposed to be allies here, and this is affecting the world economy when it comes to the oils. So you want the United States, which already pays the most in world security, even though we're supposed to all chip in, but okay, fine. You want the United States to be the only one trying to ensure that a power like Iran doesn't get nuclear weapons, becomes a threat to everybody, and you want us to shore up the strait. So you want us to do everything once again. And so I think the reason why they want us to do everything is because we've been doing everything, and there is a general weakness in getting involved in any sort of conflict whatsoever coming from Western Europe.
But if you look at the, I always forget which leak of diplomatic papers was who in terms of the stuff that was put on WikiLeaks. But ignoring the fact I can't remember particularly which incident, it was remarkable when you read a lot of these diplomatic cables, where every country in the Middle East was encouraging the Americans to attack countries like Iraq, get rid of Saddam Hussein, deal with the Iranians. And then but in all of these diplomatic cables, it'd go, however, they won't publicly support us. What they've done is, you know, the embassy in Kuwait has been visited to tell the American ambassador, hey, do us a favour, get rid of Saddam, and then, but we're going to slag you off when we do it, when you do it. and I think similarly, when you're not contributing anything financially to any of this, I mean, I repeat the comment, you know, if I was from Minnesota and my 18-year-old son was at risk of dying to protect Europe, I would ask myself why somebody from Sunderland does not have the back of American Marines in the Strait of Hormuz. I would ask that very simple question.
Yeah, and I can definitely understand that point. And listen, this is not to say that Americans in general agree with everything that is going on in our approach when it comes to Iran.
No.
There are a lot of questions, even amongst myself, as far as, is this a good idea? Was this a good idea in the first place? And so there's different times I wrestle with that. But there's a lot of gun-shy play when it comes to this type of stuff, because we saw Iraq, we saw Afghanistan, we saw them. I remember, I'm at least old enough to remember, mission accomplished, and George W. Bush is coming off the plane. We did it, guys. And then 20 years later, Joe Biden messes it all up coming out of Afghanistan. So it becomes like these seemingly forever wars. And American soldiers lost their lives over what exactly? And that is the ultimate thing. It's one thing for us to get into a conflict where there's a clear way that we can win this, and it's a threat to American society, and we must do it, and we are compelled to do it.
But don't more Americans die because of an inability of countries to just do the basics and say we agree with them, right? And say, yeah, you know what? The reason America went into Afghanistan was not because they're bloodthirsty neocons who want to wipe out every Muslim. It's because three of their major buildings were hit by planes being used as missiles, right? That's, you know, that basic. If you read, I would imagine most young people now think that the World Trade Center attack was a response to the attack in Iraq and Afghanistan, because the way it's presented is America hates all Muslims and Muslims are very upset about it, right? That's not the way round it. But that's because of the general moral cowardice of countries like Britain.
Yes, I don't disagree with you there, and I really hope our young people don't actually believe that. But it wouldn't surprise me because of the particular narrative that we have going on here in the States. But you're exactly right. It was a response. Most Americans were fine with the response. The problem is the plan. And that's what, I don't know if Donald Trump has actually communicated properly what his plan is. If the plan is that we're not having boots on the ground, we're just going to bomb them until the oblivion, then that's the plan. But if that plan doesn't work, and then you're now saying, well, actually, we're just going to put 1,000 troops on the ground, that starts to sound sort of familiar. And then it becomes 10,000 troops. Then it's 2 years later. You know, you understand what I'm saying? Absolutely. That is the fear coming from America.
But if you look at what happened in the invasion of Iraq, with the little bit that Britain did in Basra, it was remarkable. And I think sometimes the Americans have not learnt from the British, because the British, look, ruled India with 10,000 people. Your average Indian never met a British person. When we went to Basra, first thing we did was told all local government workers to come in the following day, all police to come in the following day. They had a new British leader, but all the police stayed, and they challenged local kids to a football match. British soldiers were issued with sweets to give to local kids and all this sort of thing, which was basically the standard British plan. Take control of the levers of government quickly, get everybody back to work, get all the public sector people paid, make sure the local kids are not angry, do something to humanise the British soldiers. Well, of course, you know, the Americans have created the greatest invasion force in human history, but it's not a colonial army, and they've not learnt the lessons of colonialism in the way perhaps the British have.
You could be right there. I don't.
That, by the way, was the basis for why Bill O'Reilly called for Donald Rumsfeld to be sacked, because he said you had a group of people in the British who actually knew how to do this, but you never listened to it. I mean, I'm perfectly happy, it has to be said, with just bombing the hell out of the Iranian nuclear weapons program and just saying, well, okay, regime change is for the Iranians to deal with. I don't think the invasion by America, and I hope it doesn't come, but I don't think it's a good idea either way.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't want it to come to that point. But I think with everything that we do, especially the Trump administration, there has to be good PR alongside it. You can't just say, we're just going to bomb them, they're a threat, without telling the American public with confidence as to what the plan is. Or obviously not every single detail, but here's the general strategy that we're attempting to do, and we're going to execute it flawlessly. So if they have a particular plan, they need to make sure they communicate it. But if they have a plan and they say something, and then a week later it becomes something else,
yes,
you lose the confidence of the public.
But final comment, that is why America lost in Afghanistan. The reality is, 8 weeks into that, well, probably 6 weeks into that campaign, America had won. And every time they won, they came up with a new, higher standard of what it constituted to win, until in the end they needed liberal democracy, they needed proper economics, they needed a democratic government, elected president. And you thought, my God, I mean, and America was defeated in Afghanistan only because they kept raising the standard of what constituted a win until it couldn't be done. Anyway, Adam Coleman, thank you so much for coming in. Adam's a columnist at the New York Post. What a great guest. So pleased that he's joined us. Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk. Okay, this is the Late Show with Andre Walker and Pete Barnes. Pete, you're going to have to talk now, because the quantity of sweets I've just consumed
I'm not going to lie.
led to a gluey...
It's like watching Henry the Hoover. Like what was it from Teletubbies, that new thing? It was like,
yeah,
it was
the
ridiculous.
Naughty Helicopter.
Yeah.
The Naughty Helicopter, wasn't
No,
it?
that was Nunu was, it was like a Hoover thing. The helicopter was Thomas the Tank Engine. Thomas the Tank Engine. But yeah, what would you like me to talk about?
I would like you to work out, so I'm looking at the cabinet. Who do we reckon the least famous one is?
All of them.
How about Ian Murray?
Ian Murray.
Would you know what Ian Murray looked like?
No, but this is a great game. It's like Guess Who for people we should know.
Joe Stevens.
I think Joe Stevens is not working. No.
So he's the Scottish secretary. She's the Welsh secretary. But I think I will tell you something. If you can tell me who the Lord Privy Seal is,
oh good Lord,
I will give you 50 quid.
Lord Privy Seal.
And the leader of the Lords.
Jeez.
Okay.
I actually have no idea.
Okay.
Absolutely
it's
not.
Baroness Smith of Basildon. That's great.
Yes, I'm going to say.
I mean, look, let's just be clear. This woman, right, I don't know if you can see it on my phone, but, like, the House of Lords is supposed to be filled with the great and the good.
Yeah.
Who is she?
She looks like a head teacher.
Oh, she probably was.
Yeah.
Right. Why don't we just ask, who is Baroness Smith of Basildon?
Yeah, but isn't this rather a telling of the entire problem we have in politics?
Without doubt.
There's no talent. There's nobody of any kind of substance. There's no, actual, gusto there anymore. And I always say it's because we managerialised it. But also, and people don't like it when I say this, I think the public have a lot of blame in this because you kept voting for these idiots. I think that's a big one.
Right, so here we go. So this is the Lord Privy Seal, the leader of the House of Lords. This is extremely important. Now, we've said that the House of Lords has been denigrated quite badly.
Yes.
Do you want to hear her background?
Go on.
Okay. She's a Labour and Cooperative peer, and she was a prominent front bencher, apparently.
Really?
Yes. She was MP for Basildon between 1997 and the 2010 general election. That meant, throughout all the Blair years she was there,
Yeah.
how many times did you come across her?
Never.
Okay, right. That's probably because she was the parliamentary undersecretary for the third sector.
Oh, wow. Right.
Right,
I
right.
mean, why do we have a parliamentary undersecretary for the third sector? I think that's the bigger question. You know?
She's not even the number two.
I mean, talk about it's one of those kind of Soviet Union things where you just have to give people a title.
Basically, so what makes me laugh is she was made Baroness Smith of Basildon in July 2010, which means she lost.
Yes, basically, yeah.
She lost. So the votes of Basildon threw her out of Parliament, and she was immediately reappointed. Okay, she was Shadow Deputy Chief Whip. There you go.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's quite a semi-important position, but not when you're in opposition.
I'm convinced, by the way, that if Lord Lucan wants to hide anywhere, the Liberal Democrat front bench in the House of Lords would have been.
I was on Plank of the Week, and we did this thing about the Lib Dems. And I thought, look at that, it's a lesser spotted Lib Dem. It's literally that's what it is, because they hold so much power, and yet they are in an era of protest politics, not present.
No.
I mean, how Ed Davey is still clinging on to his job. I mean, he's a perfect example of why we don't fire anybody. Lib Dems, grow a backbone and fire that guy, will you please? You're not going to get anywhere.
But how many? But I'll tell you what, the House of Lords is full of them. There's dozens. There's hundreds of them.
Yeah, the Lib Dems have held a majority there, or for at one point for quite some time, and yet nobody ever talked about it. And that is why Brexit always got held up. And this is why so many things that Reform want to get through. It is fixing the Lords. Because it is ridiculous. I mean, was it Theresa May? She had to get Andrew Lloyd Webber and all these kind of lords to come back to pass something, didn't she? Just to get it through. I mean, that looked terrible, didn't it?
Somebody said something nice.
Oh.
Andre and Pete, I think no one has bothered ringing or messaging you tonight because it's been really interesting just listening to you two chat.
Oh, that's very nice.
Thanks for a lovely evening, guys. And that's from Carol in Pembroke.
Thank you,
Carol, you're lying.
Yes, yeah.
Look, if the conversation was truly interesting, people would have responded in some way. Okay, let's go to Ken in London. Ken, no doubt you want to talk to us tonight about what an important weekend this will be.
I do, but listen, I'm very surprised, Andre, that on Good Friday, you're only allowing such a short time for Christians to call in and speak about the greatest events in history.
Well, I think of this, Ken,
the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and you're allowing a short period for Christians to call in. I'm disgusted, Andre.
But I think of this as my Thursday show, and there is a commensurate Friday show that starts at 10 o'clock.
This is Friday. We're now into Friday.
Okay, all right, I'll buy that.
See, I'm one of those people where if I've not been to bed, it's not the next day.
Yeah.
Listen.
Anyway, Ken, go for it.
If you would allow me time, this is how I would like to say it. Belief in Jesus Christ through his life, death, and resurrection, you know what it brings to a Christian? Victory over sin, over death, hell, and the devil. It is the greatest offer of salvation to mankind in history. And it is going to be mocked today and through Easter period by Easter bunnies and Easter chocolate eggs. Now, I'd like to tell you why Jesus came here. This is in the Bible. Jesus came to destroy the works of Satan. And Satan is the god of this world. And if you'll allow me just a few minutes, thanks for the time, to just tell you in what way Satan is the god of this world. He is the father of lies. He blinds people to the truth of Jesus and the gospel. He is the master of deception. He promotes cheating and lying in the political realm. He is the director of every false religion on earth. He influences national cultures, all education systems. He glorifies sex and human rebellion against God. This is the ways that he is the God of this world. But Jesus, the Son of God, came to destroy his works in the lives of those who will repent and believe in him, Andre. This is reality. We are headed for the greatest time of deception in human history. Jesus is the only one who can save us. And great opposition is coming from every quarter to shut up the Christians. But the Christians, we need to be filled with the Holy Spirit and proclaim Jesus.
What does this weekend mean to you personally?
What it means to me that I have everlasting life. It's such a joyful understanding, not because of anything good I've ever done or ever deserved, but simply because when I heard of Jesus, the Son of God, that he came to this world to die for the sin of the world, including all my sins, and he was raised from the dead to give us salvation and eternal life, when I turned to God genuinely and asked him for forgiveness, in my heart, God gave me eternal life and salvation.
Tell me why it is wrong for my mum to have given me Easter eggs before we went to church on Easter Sunday.
Well, that's just a family custom, Andre. I used to get the same. It takes us away from the reality of Jesus. It makes it just like a game, a children's story.
See, I think within the confines of a Christian household on a day of Christian celebration, I think anything, my mother used to cook a birthday cake for Jesus on Christmas Day, and after church we used to blow out the candles and whatever. I think anything that is celebratory in a Christian context on Sunday is a good thing, isn't it?
If you're believing along with that in the life, death and resurrection of Jesus, if that's included in it, if that's the foundations of that day of worship, if you're remembering Jesus. See, the Bible, listen to this, the Bible prophesies, the wicked are those who refuse to believe in Jesus, the wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget God. Now, if you want to get to hell, if anybody wants to get to hell, just forget about Jesus, live the life the way you want, live as an atheist, do what you want, enjoy yourself, you'll end up in hell.
But Ken, can't people say, and I think a lot of people would turn around and say that the way Britain is today is structured towards atheism. I mean, look, I like to send Christmas cards with a picture of Jesus and the three kings and the nativity scene and all that sort of thing. It's increasingly hard to do that. If you want to send an Easter card to somebody which is about Jesus rising from the dead and ascending into heaven, and not just get a picture of some eggs and a bunny, that is increasingly hard as well. And when you're critical of, I mean, I know you're not being overly critical of people, but when we say, you know, people are turning away from the original message of Easter. The original message of Easter is not exactly blasted to them in Tesco, is it? I mean, what's blasted to them is what you said, the bunnies, the eggs, the chocolates, the stuff that is not relevant. Sorry, the bit that should be a bit of fun on top of the fundamental bit has become the fundamental bit.
Andre, we have to understand what is happening today in the world. Mm-hmm. Satan is the god of this world. You know why? He influences, and he is the power behind all devilish wokery. He is the influencer and the power behind antichrist LGBT queer ideology. Satan, as the god of this world, is the power and influence behind Islamist terrorism and the Islamic desire to rule the world. It's Satan who's the influencer.
But are you going to say that somebody who is in a same-sex relationship is as bad as a jihadi that's blowing up a school bus?
Say that again?
Is somebody in a gay relationship as bad as a jihadi blowing up a school bus?
Just the same in the eyes of God. No, I'm not judging anything. God is considered...
Well, I mean, I judge people who blow up school buses.
Yeah. God, listen, there is such a place as hell. Let me tell you, all your listeners, you're fed up listening to me, I know that.
No.
But let me tell you with love and concern, in my heart for everyone who's listening or watching, there is a place called hell. It's an eternal place. The liberal Christians say it's not eternal, but the Bible says it's eternal. There's an eternal lake of fire. There's also an eternal place called heaven. And when you and I die, if you die without Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, God declares in the Bible, you will go to hell.
Do you ever... Yeah, I think we do, and I think the country does as well. Do you ever get downbeat or depressed? Because obviously, I think you're, if you want to call it a ministry, the work that you do, going out talking to people, I think you've won over a lot of our viewers and listeners. They don't agree with everything, but the fact that you want to protect the integrity of the family, the fact you want to protect schools from wokish nonsense, the fact that you are against jihadism and all that sort of thing. I think people vaguely would rather live in a Ken world than a Keir Starmer world. But do you ever get depressed and think, the challenge is too hard?
It's not too hard with Jesus in your heart, Andre. A Christian does this not in his own power. We don't do this in our own power. We do it when we're empowered by the Holy Spirit. Let me tell you this. When I became a Christian, I used to be a very arrogant type of man. You wouldn't have liked me. When I became a Christian, God changed me and gave me love in my heart for people I never had before. It is an amazing grace, miracle in the heart of a Christian. I'm far from perfect, very far from perfect. But God has changed me to love and be concerned for souls. And the greatest thing in my life as a Christian man is to tell somebody about the love of Jesus and to tell them God offers us forgiveness. This is the greatest blessing on earth, to be forgiven of our sins. We're all sinners, but God in his love shed his blood in our place that you and I could be forgiven and receive eternal life by faith in Christ alone, not by our works. I love doing this. This is my life.
Right.
I'm here.
Ken, we're running late on the break, but thanks a lot. And by the way, Ken had a bit of a go at me, but today we don't consider the Friday show. We consider the Thursday show, even though it's Good Friday. We'll be back in a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Talk, and whilst it's Good Friday today, Easter Friday, what am I talking about? Whilst it's Good Friday today, it was Passover yesterday, the second day of Passover. I'm told that the reason it goes on for 2 days outside Israel is because it took quite a long time in the old days for word to get to people that it was the actual day of Passover.
Is that true?
Apparently.
Wow.
So often they did it a day late. So now, if you're outside Israel, they do 2 days. Asher Gould was on the second day of Passover when the show started on Thursday. That is bizarre. When the show started on Thursday.
I didn't know that. Yeah, there's a lot about this, like these kind of festivals and religions things that I don't know, and I do actually find them quite interesting.
I had a very good friend of mine who's Jewish, and I don't want to insult anyone, who said, I just think some rabbi made all of it up at some point. Because there are a lot of the rituals. Like when I go into church, you know, the incense and this, you know, the smells and bells and the body and blood of Christ and all this sort of thing. Transubstantiation. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I have to admit, when my sister got married, I stepped into the church and my grandmother went, "Oh, look at that, the world intend." So I think that's a solid rule when it comes to me and religion.
But she thought the floor would just swallow you.
Literally, the world would end. Literally, as I stepped 1 foot inside a church. She went, but it was very loud in a very quiet church.
Well, old people don't care, do they?
No.
Is she offended by flatulence?
Oh,
no, because
she's offended by everything.
Oh, is she? Because
we're all very aware of it.
Because old people sometimes just go for it and don't care.
Yeah, the thing is, though, I've started doing that and I'm not that old.
No, all right, Cindy is in Michigan. Cindy, you're on Talk.
Hi, Andre. Hi, Pete.
Hey.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to talk about Hugh Edwards.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, you know, I think that he should have been medically castrated.
Yeah.
And I think that him wanting to write or have produced his side of the story in future, I think that shouldn't be allowed. I think that being that he was convicted of being a pedophile, we don't know if there were images of one child or multiple.
Yeah, we know there were multiple images. Could have been the same child, and one of them was category A, which is penetration, animal bestiality, or violence. And the victim was between 7 and 9 years old.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm very glad you brought this up, because I was furious when I saw that article in the Mail. I was like, my side of it. You don't have a side in this argument anymore. You forfeited the right for anybody to listen or care about you.
Here's the bit that I don't understand, Cindy and Pete. Right, somebody contacts you on Instagram to say that they're a paedophile who has child sex material, and you're Hugh Edwards, and he went for a pint with him. I mean, like...
I don't get that.
How is that?
Yeah. If I could ask him one question, that's the question.
Hello, I'm a sex offender. I would like to sell you pornographic pictures of children. Like, as a cold call. I mean, even if you were into that, you'd say no.
All I can imagine is he turned up with, like, the glasses with a moustache. Do you know, like, it's a kind of disguise. Because he's a very recognisable person in the UK.
Sorry, Cindy.
No, these people find a way of linking up together.
Yeah.
And they form groups.
Yes.
And things like that. So they're out there. They do this, and it should actually be illegal for him to you know, because somebody's got, in order for him to make a movie of his side, someone's going to have to fund it.
Yeah, actually, there was a long debate, Cindy. I don't know how it works in America. There was a long debate in Britain about whether you should be entitled to royalties from media generated by your criminality.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Okay, Cindy, thanks so much. Let's go to Paula in Halifax. Paula, you're on Talk.
Good evening, Andre.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm feeling chipper. How are you?
Well, I actually wanted to say thank you very much for when I last rang you, and I was a little bit on the rocky side, a bit upset.
No problem at all.
You were really kind to me, and I'd like to thank you for that.
Not a problem at all. I mean, I don't remember it, but I'm sure it was great. I'm joking.
Great.
I'm joking.
Yeah.
So how are you now?
No, I'm fine, Andre, thank you. But what I'm ringing up for is, what do you reckon to all this bloody royal family garbage and Fergie and stuff?
What Fergie being removed as a Freeman of York?
Duchess of York, wasn't she?
No, she's not. Of course she's been removed as Duchess.
She has,
And the Freedom of York. I find it really odd. I was talking about the situation in Lisbon in Northern Ireland where they had a tree planted by the Duke of York, and there was a debate about whether to take away the plaque. And to be fair, an SDLP Labour councillor said, should we remove our past? Isn't that a bit dangerous? And I was thinking...
Wait a minute.
Well, I suppose if he's still alive...
Yeah,
it's not really the past.
I do find it interesting. The people that want to kind of erase him are very, very, say that, should we do that? I'm very keen on tearing down Churchill. There's a lack of kind of consistency on this one. But my thing with Fergie is, I'm not being funny, something bad is going to happen to that woman.
Yeah.
I mean, we are pushing, they deserve everything that's coming to them, but don't get me wrong. But, I mean, you've got to stop poking the bear at this point, because I feel the nations might start to get sympathy for them, and when that happens, everything changes. It happens all the time that when people start to say, oh well, you're a bit mean now, it's gone too far, that's when they start to kind of come back into public life. Right. And we've got to stop that. We've got to draw a line and just ignore them.
She is the comeback queen, Paula, isn't she, Sarah Ferguson?
Well, I mean, I've never reckoned out to Fergie anyway. I just thought she was a bit of a... I mean, she's always sold stories and stuff for loads of money, hasn't she? It's commonly known.
Yes. It's commonly believed.
She was married to the Mount Andrew Mountbatten, and he's done what he's done. And I mean, come on, it doesn't take any working out, really, does it?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, I think that there's an element of this which is, I think the bigger problem with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and I'll put this to Pete, is that he's money grabbing.
Yes.
I don't know he's a sex offender. I don't think he is. I think it's more to do with the money than.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I'm not saying he's behaved appropriately, but
I have to admit, I'm with you on this, because I do feel like if it was that kind of thing, I think we would have found the evidence of it by now. I think that because they're kind of going down the kind of malfeasance in a public office and they're doing this stuff, is they're looking for something to get him on.
Yes,
and
I agree.
And I think this was a big problem, because I know a lot of people say, well, they were a bit stupid because they wrote all this stuff down. The point of what that was look what I can get away with. This was a very kind of, I'm that powerful, you can't touch me. And now it's all come back on them, and they're kind of, they don't really know what to do.
And also standards change. You've got to be careful. Always live by your principles, not what you can get away with.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, let's go to Yasmin, the teenage witch. You've got 30 seconds. I'm so sorry.
I'm just saying it's been a fantastic